Chapter 817. With just one slash, Duan Tianlang felt a life-and-death crisis. He knew that the gap between him and Chu Xiu was very big, but he didn't expect it to be so big. Duan Tianlang gritted his teeth. Before Chu Xiu slashed for the second time, his whole body was already burning with a majestic power of blood. He actually chose to burn his blood essence to escape. Chu Xiu sneered when he saw this. Burning his blood essence in front of him, Duan Tianlang was courting death. When the blood divine demonic technique was activated, all the surrounding power of blood, whether it was Chu Xiu's own or others, was under his control. In an instant, Duan Tianlang felt that his whole body was boiling. His own blood essence was actually out of his control. Duan Tianlang clenched his teeth as he watched the blood-red shadows fly out from Chu Xiu's surroundings, bringing with them a terrifying aura to attack him. His body was enveloped by a layer of green light, and he disappeared in the blink of an eye like a swimming dragon. Chu Xiu frowned, and he retracted the blood shadow technique. Duan Tianlang really didn't expect this guy to have such a move. This speed was even similar to the speed when Kuang Shiyue chased him before. Lu Jianghu sneered and said, "This kid must be afraid of you to the extreme." Chu Xiu said in surprise, "Why do you say so?" Lu Jianghu said, "This kid is using the Blue Dragon Society's Azure Dragon embodiment mystic art, but the real strength of this mystic art is in close combat. It is extremely fierce and powerful, but the backlash is not small. Therefore, only martial artists who have stepped into the real fire god refinement realm can cultivate it." Earlier, Xiao Chen's move was Return of the Azure Dragon. In an instant, he could raise his speed to the limit. However, he now gave up the latter half of the attack, leaving only the first move, so he can barely use it with his real pellet state cultivation. But look at him. Even if he manages to escape, he won't be able to withstand this power. Even if he doesn't die, he'll be heavily injured. Normal people wouldn't cultivate the escaping part of a secret technique. This kid is probably afraid that you'll kill him even in his dreams, so he doesn't learn anything else but the escaping secret technique first. Needless to say, Lu Jianghu's analysis was pretty good. Duan Tianlang really thought so back then. Duan Tianlang flattered Bu Tiannan very clearly. He finally made Bu Tiannan happy and gave him the Azure Dragon Incarnation secret technique, but he could not learn it. This made Duan Tianlang very depressed. However, because he was always worried about Chu Xiu's revenge, he gritted his teeth and took the initiative to learn this life-saving move. He didn't expect to really use it today. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and continued to chase after Duan Tianlang. Duan Tianlang's mystic art definitely couldn't last long. He didn't believe that Duan Tianlang could escape from his palm. However, after chasing for more than 10 miles, the traces became fainter and fainter. This made Chu Xiu a little surprised. Duan Tianlang is actually quite persistent. He can actually hold on until now. Chu Xiu did not plan to continue the chase because he could vaguely hear the sounds of a battle coming from the top of a tall mountain that resembled a long sword. The aura coming from it was very familiar to Chu Xiu. There was Fang Qi Shao, Lu Fengxian, Zhang Qingjun and Zhong Xian. These four people are so coincidental that they all met at the same time. Chu Xiu directly gave up chasing Duan Tianlang, who had escaped somewhere, and went straight to the peak. The higher he went, the steeper it became. This peak seemed to be deliberately carved out by someone. It was in the shape of a long sword. When Chu Xiu climbed to the top, the four were fighting fiercely. Zhong Xian was holding the Ming King seal and fighting fiercely with Lu Fengxian. Although Lu Fengxian's strength was not weak, he was still promoted to the real pellet state later than Zhong Xian. Although he was born with divine power, he was not as strong as Zhong Xian's power foundation, so even if he had an unparalleled divine weapon in his hand, he was still suppressed. As for Fang Qi Shao, it was much more lively. He shouted while fighting with Zhang Qingjun. It was unknown whether he was bursting out of his talkative attribute or he wanted to use verbal attacks to harass Zhang Qingjun. "Hey, Zhang Qingjun, you are too much. I found this place first. You, the dignified little celestial master, also want to snatch things? Damn, you are still using weapons. Your slaying evil is ranked 10th in the famous sword manual, and my shocking salamander is only 21st, aren't you embarrassed to take it? If you have the ability, put down your weapon and let's have a fair fight. Bah! Shameless. Where are you going to fight? Do you think a Taoist can't find a woman, and you are jealous of my lower body's sexual happiness? Although Fang Qixiao's side was shouting and looked very imposing, he was suppressed by Zhang Qingjin very badly. The gap between the two could be said to be quite obvious. At this time, when Chu Xiu came, the four people fighting stopped and looked at Chu Xiu. Zhong Xian was expressionless, Zhang Qingjin moved his eyebrows slightly, and Fang Qixiao and Lu Fengxian were all happy. Fang Qixiao laughed, ha ha ha. Brother Chu, you came at the right time, let's besiege this shameless Taoist together. To be able to say besieging so openly, it was unknown whether it was Fang Qixiao who was shameless or Zhang Qingjin who was shameless. Chu Xiu didn't make a move. He just walked over and asked, "What's the situation? Did you find the treasure?" Fang Qixiao pointed at the mountain and said, "This is an ancient sword sect, a sword testing ground of the world sword sect. Of course, it's not the weapon, but the swordsmen themselves. There are sword puppets guarding it. In the past, when the world sword sect was still around, as long as a swordsman passed the sword puppet trial, he would be able to obtain a treasure guarded by the sword puppet. With it, he would have the qualification to go down the mountain to roam the world, and that treasure is your trump card. These things are all recorded in the ancient books of our Sword King city. This is one of the many trial grounds of the world sword sect. There are 3 sword puppets on it that are intact, and there must be something in their bodies. Previously, we didn't have enough people, but now we do." Since they couldn't beat Zhang Qingjin and the others in a 2-on-2 fight, Fang Qixiao didn't have anything to be embarrassed about now. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "The 2 of you go kill the sword puppets and get the treasure. I'll block them." Fang Qixiao was stunned, and the way he looked at Chu Xiu changed. "Brother, why are you so arrogant now? That's Zhang Qingjin and Zhong Xian, not some Tom, Dick, and Harry." But seeing Chu Xiu's serious face, Fang Qixiao didn't say much. He directly pulled Lu Fengxian and went to kill the sword puppets. Chu Xiu wasn't a person who liked to joke, especially on this occasion. He shouldn't be joking. But now that Chu Xiu said so, it meant that he had a certain degree of certainty to do so. Zhang Qingjin glanced at Chu Xiu with a slightly surprised gaze. "You don't think that after stepping into the real pellet state, only you, Chu Xiu, have improved, and we are all standing still?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Of course not, but I have confidence in myself." Zhang Qingjin smiled and said, "Coincidentally, I am also very confident in myself." As soon as he spoke, before Zhang Qingjin made a move, Zhong Xian had already blasted out a punch. The Buddha's power was mighty and shook the world. For people like Zhong Xian, his thinking was very simple. If you want to fight, then fight. He didn't care about being besieged. Moreover, recently in the Great Light Temple, he had more contact with Su Du after the 2 of them joined forces to kill Yuan Tianfang last time. Su Du was extremely respectful of Chu Xiu. This even made Zhong Xian, who had no intention of winning, want to see how strong Chu Xiu was now. Zhang Qingjin squinted his eyes, and he didn't make a move immediately. Instead, he wanted Zhong Xian to see how strong Chu Xiu was. Chu Xiu had his pride, and Zhang Qingjin also had his pride. In the past, in the Longhu list, Zhang Qingjin dominated the Longhu list for more than 10 years. In the entire younger generation, only Zhong Xian could compete with him. Although there was an additional Chu Xiu in the later stage, he still suppressed so many people. He was the first to step into the real pellet state, and he even condensed the Thunder Golden Core. But for a period of time, the Taoist master's mansion was closed, and he rarely made a move. On the other hand, Chu Xiu killed the powerhouse of the real fire spirit refinement state and became famous in the underworld. So in this way, the entire underworld was also divided into 2 factions. One faction thought that among the younger generation, the most terrifying was still Chu Xiu, who already had the strength to kill the real fire spirit refinement state powerhouse. But there was another faction of people who thought that Chu Xiu could kill the real fire spirit refinement state because of tricks. In terms of real strength, little celestial master was better. These people were arguing there, but the people involved didn't care much. Whether it was for Chu Xiu or for Zhang Qingzhen, when did they ever care about other people's opinions? In their hearts, there was only one idea in common, that was, they would never be weaker than others. At this time, in the field, Chu Xiu had already fought with Zhong Xian. Both of them walked the path of incomparably violent fighting style, directly using brute force to kill, opening and closing with brute force. When Zhong Xian fought with Chu Xiu in the past, he was already weaker than Chu Xiu. But since the last time he stepped into the martial Dao Grand Master realm, he began to return to the Great Light Temple to train hard, and Su Ci, Su Yun, and Su Du had taken turns to guide him. This kind of treatment was not available to ordinary Great Light Temple disciples. Especially Su Du, although this person didn't seem very reliable, his understanding of martial arts was unique, which benefited Zhong Xian a lot. At this time, when Zhong Xian attacked, endless Buddha's light appeared behind him, among which were the prison-guarding Wisdom King, the immovable Wisdom King, and dozens of Wisdom King phantoms hovered behind him. As Zhong Xian's palm fell, the Wisdom King was furious, slaying evil and subduing demons. Zhong Xian's move even had the scene of thousands of gods and Buddhas merging into one when Su Du faced Yuan Tianfang in the past. The only difference was that Zhong Xian only cultivated the power of the immovable Wisdom King. In an instant, endless blood light emerged in Chu Xiu's eyes. On the heavenly demon dance, blood chi and demonic chi surged. As the saber slashed down, endless twisted bloodlines extended to the heavenly demon dance. This saber seemed to have flesh and blood, as well as a soul. As the blood mist and demonic chi surged, it had already slashed toward Zhong Xian's Wisdom King seal. Chapter 8:18. As the martial art that Lu Jianghu was most proud of, the demonic blood technique of the blood god was not as simple as the strengthened version of the demonic blood technique. The main use of the demonic blood technique was to guide the opponent's chi and blood in battle and devour the opponent's chi and blood to cultivate. It could only be said to be a quick technique. However, the effect of the demonic blood technique was not on the demon, but on the spirit, which was the use of the power of chi and blood. The power of chi and blood was the foundation of a martial artist, and it was the source of all divine forms. As Chu Xiu's saber slashed down, Chu Xiu's power of chi and blood extended into the demonic dance. In Chu Xiu's perception, the demonic dance seemed to have truly fused with Chu Xiu as one. The majestic power of chi and blood exploded, and the Wisdom King phantoms shattered one after another. A violent rumbling sound even attracted the attention of Fang Qi Shao and Lu Fengxian, who were fighting with the sword puppets above. Fang Qi Shao murmured, "One with the saber? That can't be. Even Chu Xiu's martial arts can achieve one with the saber?" When a martial artist's compatibility with the weapon reached a certain level, such a change would occur, and the power would become even stronger. For example, the sword cultivators of the 5 major sword sects, such as Sword King City, loved the sword as much as their lives. What they pursued was the realm of one with the sword. It was not just in terms of philosophy, but the unity of the primordial spirit and the body. As long as the sword existed, the person existed. If the sword was destroyed, the person would die. Take the Windcloud Sword Tomb for example. After the experts of the Windcloud Sword Tomb died, their sword spirits also died and were buried together with them. Fang Qi Shao believed that others could reach this realm, but how could someone like Chu Xiu, who had a complicated martial art, cultivate the saber Dao to this level? It was not fair. At this moment, in the battlefield, after Chu Xiu gained the upper hand with a single slash, strands of blood threads bloomed around him, and there was even a bloody mist that enveloped his entire body. With every slash, the bloody mist would become denser. In the end, it actually directly enveloped Chu Xiu's entire body, and the baleful blood energy ceaselessly corroded the Buddhist light. Zhong Xian's eyes were shrouded in Buddhist light. Behind him, the alchemist glazed light king's Buddha image shone brightly, releasing spots of silver-white Buddhist light. He wanted to break through the cover of the blood mist, but it was to no avail. It was actually very easy to deal with a martial artist like Zhong Xian, but it was also very difficult. To put it simply, as long as one's strength and foundation were superior to his opponent's, then there was no need to consider any changes at all. One could directly confront his opponent head-on and defeat him. But the difficult thing was, who among martial artists of the same level could guarantee that their strength and foundation could compare to Zhong Xian's? Unfortunately, Chu Xiu was one of them. Seeing that Zhong Xian had been forced to the extreme, Zhang Qingjin finally made a move. Lightning flashed, and the Five Thunders' true technique was cast. As the lightning fell, the blood mist was smashed by the lightning in an instant. Zhang Qingjin's body was shining with lightning. With a wave of his hand, Divine Firmament Heavenly Thunder, Purple Heaven Divine Thunder, Yin Extreme Yang Thunder and so on were cast out from his hands. Half of the mountainside was instantly shrouded by lightning. As soon as Zhang Qingjin made a move, even Chu Xiu's face was a little moved. Even Fang Qi Shao's face above was a little ugly. The reason was very simple. When Zhang Qingjin fought with him just now, he didn't even use 70% of his strength, and he was still struggling to resist. This was a bit of a blow to him. For nearly a year in the Daoist Master Mansion, Zhang Qingjin rarely appeared in the eyes of the people of the martial arts world. At this time, it was the first time he used his full strength after stepping into the real pellet state. This power was simply terrifying. Chu Xiu waved one hand and boundless blood-colored shadows condensed out from his body. Some of them surged with sword qis, some of them formed Buddhist seals, and some of them unleashed blood-colored lightning techniques. All of them attacked Zhang Qingjin. Countless martial arts changed, which made Zhang Qingjin frown. Because one of the blood shadows cast the thunder of his Taoist master mansion. Although the thunder was basically cast by blood qi, Zhang Qingjin could see at a glance that it was definitely the unique application of Taoist master mansion's thunder. Zhang Qingjin's left hand shone with black yin thunder, and his right hand shone with hot yang thunder. Thunder was yang, and thunder was yin. Thunder was originally a powerful martial arts evolved from the power of yin and yang of Taoism. As the power of yin and yang in Zhang Qingjin's hands merged, in an instant, the thunder flashed in mid-air, and the boundless thunderclouds of dozens of miles completely shrouded the mountainside. There was a loud bang, and countless thunderbolts fell like thunder snakes dancing wildly. It was extremely terrifying. At this moment, Zhong Xian, who had been suppressed by Chu Xiu, formed a complicated Buddha gesture in his hand, and a tiny golden light bloomed from his palm. That golden light evolved into the infinite Buddhist kingdom, but it was not Buddha who suppressed the entire Buddhist kingdom, but a hell-guarding wisdom king. The Buddhist Dharma is boundless. In an instant, the Buddhist kingdom directly broke through the boundless blood mist and shrouded Chu Xiu. Whether it was Zhang Qingjin or Zhong Xian, they once stood at the peak of the younger generation of the martial arts world. Although the momentum they created during this period of time was not as strong as Chu Xiu's, it did not mean that they were weaker than Chu Xiu. The two of them attacked at the same time, and even Fang Qi Shao murmured, F***ck. Brother Chu seems to have gone too far this time. Brother Lu, should we go and save him? Lu Fengxian looked down and shook his head, there's no need. Brother Chu's potential is stronger than you think. During this period of time, Lu Fengxian had been staying by Chu Xiu's side, and he had seen how strong Chu Xiu's strength was. Even an existence like Yuan Tianfang was defeated by Chu Xiu. Zhang Qingjin and Zhong Xian were strong, and at least Lu Fengxian was not a match for them. But that did not mean that Chu Xiu was not a match for them. Those who had been around Chu Xiu for a long time would always have a subconscious illusion that no matter when or what kind of trouble they encountered, as long as Chu Xiu was there, he could solve it. This was not just trust, but also the confidence that Chu Xiu's near-undefeated record had given them for such a long time. At this time, the pressure on Chu Xiu had reached its peak. Zhong Xian and Zhang Qingjin, these two were dragons and phoenixes among men. They were both at the peak of the younger generation, and their strength was unfathomable. At this time, when the two of them attacked with all their strength, the pressure on Chu Xiu was even greater than when he faced Fang Jinwu. So at this moment, Chu Xiu didn't care that his strength had not recovered to its peak. A mysterious aura spread out from the demonic dance. In an instant, the world was frozen. The demonic blade slashed out as if the world was torn apart like a painting scroll. Ethereal mortal slash. This extreme demonic blade slashed through the immeasurable Buddha kingdom, and it also slashed through the thunderclouds in the sky. It even left a huge and hideous blade mark of thousands of meters on the entire mountainside. It looked extremely horrifying. At this moment, not far from the mountainside where Chu Xiu and the others fought, some martial artists of various sects had already gathered. They were all watching the battle. Seeing the battle between Chu Xiu and the others, this group of people could be said to be taking a deep breath. They were also at the real pellet state, but when they saw that a junior like Chu Xiu could show such strength, they all had a feeling that they had lived in a dog's stomach all these years. What shocked them the most was that Chu Xiu was able to block the offensive of Zhang Qingjun and Zhong Xian 1 versus 2. I'm afraid that the position of the top young generation will really change hands in the future. But at this time, Chu Xiu was not feeling well either. For the ethereal mortal slash, Chu Xiu would consume a lot of his energy to execute a slash. If he executed another slash, he would probably be drained again. Hey, you two haven't taken down that sword puppet yet? I can't hold on any longer. Chu Xiu shouted at the top of the mountain. When Lu Fengxian heard this, she immediately began to attack the sword puppet with all her strength. Fang Qishao curled his lips and said, "Don't rush me. This is a puppet specially made by the sword sect in the past to test their disciples. It's different from the stuff made by the Xianwu sect. Damn, this thing is cheating. The material of this puppet can even absorb true qi. If you come up, you won't be able to deal with it in a short time." Although he said so, Fang Qishao still seized the time and attacked the sword puppet. Just when Zhang Qingjun and Zhong Xian wanted to continue to attack, a figure jumped up from below and shouted, "Chu Xiu. I'll fight you." The figure that suddenly appeared turned out to be Yi Tianxia. At this time, he was holding the blood dragon spear with a faint excitement on his face. The most important thing was that his strength had reached the real pellet state. It had only been more than a day. Even if Yi Tianxia's cultivation had reached the required level, he didn't need to cultivate behind closed doors to stabilize his cultivation after breaking through to the real pellet state. Yi Tianxia must have obtained some benefits in the secret realm. He could be said to be the luckiest group. But seeing Yi Tianxia's attack at this time, Zhang Qingjun and Zhong Xian both frowned, and their eyes flashed with a hint of disgust. They knew what Yi Tianxia was planning. It was nothing more than seeing that Chu Xiu was a little exhausted at this time, so he wanted to take the opportunity to take advantage. They didn't care about reputation, but Yi Tianxia cared about reputation the most since he stepped into the underworld. At this moment, Chu Xiu had just fought fiercely with Zhang Qingjun and Zhong Xian. He was obviously exhausted, and his strength had been greatly weakened at this time. If Yi Tianxia attacked Chu Xiu at this time, once he won, although the people in the underworld wouldn't be stupid enough to think that Yi Tianxia was stronger than Chu Xiu, Zhang Qingjun, and Zhong Xian, at least he could ride on the popularity of the three of them to increase his reputation in the underworld. This kind of method wasn't glorious, and it seemed a bit despicable, at least for Zhang Qingjun and Zhong Xian. Although they didn't dare to say that they were honorable, they disdained to use this way to gain reputation, so the moment Yi Tianxia made his move, they stopped at the same time. Chu Xiu suddenly sneered. This Yi Tianxia must be crazy to become famous. He even dared to use me as a stepping stone. Did he just step into the real pellet state, and he became arrogant? Boundless blood qi converged, and in an instant, the blood-colored demonic qi poured down like a long river. Indistinctly, the cries of hungry ghosts could be heard. Yi Tianxia, who just looked brave and rushed forward with a spear, didn't stay for a second, and he was directly slashed away by Chu Xiu's saber. Chapter 8:19. Chu Xiu was right. Yi Tianxia was just a little arrogant. Of course, this was also thanks to Chu Xiu. Although Chu Xiu had almost never had a head-on conflict with Yi Tianxia during this period of time, Yi Tianxia was extremely aggrieved because of Chu Xiu. In the previous war between the moon-worshipping cult and the demons, Yi Tianxia came to help the moon-worshipping cult on behalf of the evil extreme sect, but he was ridiculed by the moon-worshipping cult's holy maiden for not contributing as much as an outsider Chu Xiu. Then, in the floating snow city incident in the extreme north, he was also a famous figure on the Longhu list, but he was defeated by Xiao Tian, who had just stepped into the real pellet state. He was just about to find someone to take revenge, but Yan Lubing was easily defeated by Chu Xiu. After being aggrieved for so long, Yi Tianxia's luck was not bad. As soon as he entered the secret realm, he got a chance that allowed him to successfully step into the real pellet state. And because he cultivated the Blood Flood Dragon Heart Sutra, which was a vicious beast technique, he didn't need to rest behind closed doors after stepping into the real pellet state like most martial artists. At this time, seeing Chu Xiu fighting fiercely with Zhang Qingzhen and Zhong Xian, he really didn't dare to come up under normal circumstances. But now Chu Xiu was obviously a little exhausted. If he didn't make a move now, when would he? Yi Tianxia's calculation was quite good, but unfortunately, he still overestimated himself, or underestimated Chu Xiu. The moment Chu Xiu slashed out with his saber, Yi Tianxia immediately felt an irresistible force coming towards him. The force was so strong that even if he tried his best to resist, he was still blown away by the slash. If it weren't for the fact that he cultivated the Blood Flood Dragon Heart Sutra, which made his physical body extremely strong, maybe he would be seriously injured under that slash. The others around also looked at Yi Tianxia with a hint of ridicule in their eyes. Among the younger generation, there were obviously several levels of strength. Chu Xiu, Zhang Qingzhen, and Zhong Xian were undoubtedly in the first class. Yi Tianxia was not even at the second level, but he still wanted to challenge Chu Xiu. This was purely asking for trouble. But at this time, Fang Qi Shao, who was fighting the sword puppet above, suddenly shouted, F***CK. What's this? As his voice fell, a dazzling sword light rose from above. The cold light shone, and the sword energy spread out for hundreds of miles. At this moment, everyone's attention was attracted. On the mountain peak, there was a fragment of a sword puppet under Fang Qi Shao's feet. Clearly, the sword puppet had been destroyed by Fang Qi Shao. However, there was a long sword floating in midair, surrounded by piercingly cold sword qi. The long sword seemed to be made of bronze, exuding a simple and desolate feeling. However, the edge of the sword was scarlet red like blood rust, yet it was also red like fire, and it emitted an extremely piercingly cold killing intent. Seeing the appearance of the sword, Fang Qi Shao was the first to react and directly rushed toward the long sword. However, before he could reach it, he was blown away by the powerful sword intent. At this moment, the others also reacted and shouted, "It's slaying Red Dragon." Slaying Red Dragon, ranked 7th in the world-famous sword manual. This was a divine weapon that only existed in legends. It was said that in ancient times, there was a red dragon ferocious beast that caused trouble. Many heroes wanted to kill it, but they were all swallowed into the belly of the beast. A swordsmithing master's wife and daughter had also accidentally died in the mouth of the red dragon. So, in a rage, he used his own chi and blood to forge a sword and gave it to a good friend so that the friend could use it to kill the red dragon. When the sword was forged, the swordsmithing master also died due to the exhaustion of his chi and blood. After the swordsmithing master's good friend used the sword to kill the red dragon, he buried it together with the swordsmithing master and disappeared. Everyone thought that this was just a legend, but they did not expect that this divine weapon that only existed in legends would really appear before their eyes today. At this moment, Fang Qi Shao was so regretful that even his intestines were green. If he had known that there was a divine sword ranked in the top 10 of the world-famous sword manual and the world-famous sword manual, he would have reserved some strength and not destroyed the sword puppet completely. What the hell was the World Sword Sect doing? Wasn't this a sword puppet for disciples to use for training? Even if they wanted to give the trial takers some life-saving trump cards, there was no need to throw out such a divine weapon. Was this a trump card or a big gift bag? When the slaying red dragon appeared, the eyes of the martial artists who were watching earlier lit up, and they directly rushed toward the mountain peak. Previously, they had only been watching because they did not see anything good. It was equivalent to watching a show, and they did not want to interfere with the competition between the younger generation. But now that a divine weapon had appeared, they could not care less about the younger generation. Even martial artists who did not use swords could not resist the temptation of the 7th-ranked divine sword in the world-famous sword manual. The crowd swarmed up, and Fang Qishao and Lu Fengxian could not resist at all. However, the sharpness of the swordsmanship on the slaying red dragon shone brightly for a moment, and the surrounding people could not get their hands on it for a while. Divine weapons had spirits, and it was not so easy to become the master of a divine weapon. Just when Chu Xiu wanted to go up and fight for the slaying red dragon, an angry shout with hatred suddenly came, "Chu Xiu!" Chu Xiu turned around and saw 2 people climbing up the mountain. One of them had an extremely pale face, to the extent that there was no blood. It was Duan Tianlang, who had used a secret method to escape from Chu Xiu. Now, Duan Tianlang actually had the courage to appear in front of him because Bu Tiannan was standing beside him. Looking at Chu Xiu, Bu Tiannan sneered and said, "Boy, you really dared to attack. This is the 5 dragon heads of my Blue Dragon Society. What did I say? If you kill him, I will kill you." Chu Xiu frowned. Bu Tiannan, this madman, was actually here. This was a bit troublesome. What he hated the most was dealing with a madman like Bu Tiannan, because Bu Tiannan had no scruples at all. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu suddenly saw something and immediately retreated. Bu Tiannan sneered and said, "Those old fellows from your Yinma clan are here? Apart from Elder Wei, I really don't care about those useless chickens and dogs." The person Chu Xiu found was not someone from the Yinma clan, but the Gajianan king of Sword King City, Du Guli. Seeing Chu Xiu running in his direction, Du Guli frowned. He thought that Chu Xiu wanted to use his relationship with Fang Qishao to get him to save him. Although Sword King City was not an extreme righteous sect like the Great Light Temple, they would still draw a clear line between them and the demonic path. It was fine that 7th young Master Fang and Chu Xiu had an ambiguous relationship, and Du Guli couldn't care less about it. However, Chu Xiu was delusional if he wanted to save him. Just as Du Guli was about to refuse, Chu Xiu suddenly said, "Senior Du Gu, how about we make a deal? You help me block Bu Tiannan, and I will help Brother Fang fight for the slaying Scarlet Dragon. Lu Fengxian and Brother Lu will also help Brother Fang. You know my friendship with Brother Fang, and Brother Lu and I are not sword users. As long as you agree, the 7th divine sword in the world-famous sword manual will belong to Fang Qishao." Du Guli was stunned. He thought that Chu Xiu was here to ask for help, but he did not expect Chu Xiu to first talk about a deal. However, the temptation of the slaying Scarlet Dragon, which was ranked 7th in the world-famous sword manual, was too great. It was so great that he could completely ignore Chu Xiu's identity. Thus, Du Guli only thought about it for a few seconds before agreeing, "Okay." With that, Du Guli directly blocked Bu Tiannan's path. Fang Qishao, who was fighting for the slaying Scarlet Dragon with a group of warriors, couldn't help but slap his head. His martial granduncle was an honest person, but he was tricked by Chu Xiu just like that. He still didn't realize that Bu Tiannan's first target was Chu Xiu, and the slaying Scarlet Dragon came second. Thus, even if Du Guli didn't help Chu Xiu stop Bu Tiannan, he could still fight for the slaying Scarlet Dragon first. However, there were only him and Bu Tiannan at the true fire spirit refinement realm, so he subconsciously regarded Bu Tiannan as the biggest threat. Moreover, Chu Xiu secretly changed his mind and regarded himself as the key to fighting for the slaying Scarlet Dragon. Du Guli didn't have time to react and subconsciously agreed. Of course, even if Fang Qishao saw through him, he wouldn't expose him. He even wanted to ask his martial granduncle to help Chu Xiu. Seeing Du Guli blocking in front of him, Bu Tiannan raised his eyebrows and said, "Old Du Gu, since when did your Sword King City become so nosy? Are you sure you dare to attack me?" Du Guli was definitely considered a senior among the many true fire spirit refinement realm warriors. At the same time, he had a fiery temper, so he immediately exploded when he heard this. Bu Tiannan, other people might be afraid of your Blue Dragon Society, but do you think my Sword King City is afraid of you? If you really have the ability, why don't you set up a branch of the Blue Dragon Society in the western regions? Bu Tiannan revealed a grim smile. As soon as his voice fell, his figure had completely turned into a cyan streamer. His figure was like a soaring dragon. As his claw fell down, the cyan gang chi turned into a dragon claw with a loud bang. The ferocious killing intent was integrated into that claw, which made the surrounding world instantly freeze. Duguli coldly snorted and used the sky-burning sword art. The sky was filled with sword shadows burning with scorching flames. One hot and one cold, the two forces collided and intersected, causing a shockwave that was enough to make people instantly raise their eyebrows. The two only exchanged one move, and Duguli let out a muffled groan. His eyes flashed with a look of disbelief. Bu Tiannan's strength was truly terrifying to this extent. In the past, Duguli was defeated by Eastern Emperor Tai of the moon-worshipping sect. Among all the true fire spirit refinement realm warriors in the Jianghu, Eastern Emperor Tai was definitely the strongest. Now that he was facing Bu Tiannan, Duguli actually felt like he was facing Eastern Emperor Tai. Even if Bu Tiannan's strength was not as strong as Eastern Emperor Tai's, it was probably not that far off. It seemed like he was at a disadvantage when he agreed to Chu Xiu's conditions. However, now was not the time for Duguli to go back on his words. Once Bu Tiannan started fighting, he was simply like a madman. His killing intent was overflowing, and he didn't care about probing and so on. He directly used his full strength, and after a few moves, he had already suppressed Duguli to the point where he couldn't breathe. Chapter 820. Duguli was struggling to resist Bu Tiannan while Chu Xiu was helping Fang Qishao fight for the Red Dragon Slayer. The chaotic battle was exactly what Chu Xiu was best at. He used the blood shadow technique to the extreme, and countless blood shadows flew around him. Even Zhang Qingjin and Zhong Xian were not as lethal as Chu Xiu. As seventh young master Fang charged through the crowd, he complained to Zhang Qingjin, "I say, brother Zhang, no matter what, you and I are old acquaintances. It wasn't easy for me to get this godly sword. Can't you just let me have it once? You already have evil slaying, so why do you still want to fight with me for this sword? How about giving me some face?" Zhang Qingjin's treatment could be said to be the best among the younger generation of martial artists. From the moment he was born, as long as he didn't die young, he would be the future heir of the Celestial Master Mansion. From then on, the divine sword in the Celestial Master Mansion, which was ranked 10th in the famous sword book, was sealed for Zhang Qingjin's use in the future. Compared to Zhang Qingjin's treatment, Fang Qishao and Chu Xiu were basically raised by a stepmother. However, Zhang Qingjin didn't answer Fang Qishao at this time. Instead, he casually waved his hand, and endless lightning bolts fell down, which was considered as an answer to Fang Qishao. At this time, Chu Xiu suddenly sent a voice transmission to Fang Qishao, "Stop fooling around. Watch my movements later, you must keep up with me. Since your ancestor helped me stop Bu Tiannan, I will give you a big gift." Fang Qishao was stunned and looked at Chu Xiu in surprise. With so many people fighting for the Red Dragon Slayer, how could Chu Xiu be so confident? However, before Fang Qishao could think further, Chu Xiu had already made his move. Surging and pure devil chi condensed behind Chu Xiu, and a pair of arms made of devil chi appeared behind Chu Xiu. As Chu Xiu's hands formed a seal, a terrifying aura condensed in Chu Xiu's hands, and a ferocious demonic longbow materialized. With one hand holding the bow and the other holding the bowstring, the Triple City Annihilation arrow shot out. The arrow that Chu Xiu shot with almost all of his strength was not aimed at Zhang Qingjin, Zhong Xian, or anyone else. Instead, it was shot directly at the Scarlet Dragon Slayer. Everywhere it passed, everything was annihilated. The powerful energy caused everyone's hearts to tremble, and they couldn't help but avoid it. When Chu Xiu shot the arrow, Fang Qishao understood what Chu Xiu meant. The Triple City Annihilation arrow shot out, and wherever it passed, a vacuum was formed. The essence of the world was annihilated, and even the warriors in its path were forced to retreat. Fang Qixiao's figure directly turned into a sword light, and he followed behind the triple city annihilation arrow at the fastest speed possible. The arrow seemed to be opening the way for him, and he was unimpeded along the way. Even the powerful sword qi of the Scarlet Dragon Slayer began to collapse under Chu Xiu's arrow. The sword spirit even let out a sorrowful cry, and there was a hint of disbelief in its sorrowful cry. A sword spirit at the level of the Scarlet Dragon Slayer was already quite intelligent, and it even had the right to choose its master. It was just like Lu Fengxian's unparalleled divine weapon. Before Lu Fengxian obtained LV Wenho's primordial spirit fragment, she couldn't get close to the unparalleled divine weapon at all. Only when it fused with LV Wenho's primordial spirit fragment would the unparalleled divine weapon willingly let Lu Fengxian control it. Now, the Scarlet Dragon Slayer was in the same situation. After appearing in the world, the Scarlet Dragon Slayer also wanted to choose a master who was worthy of it. The existence that forged it was a top swordsmithing master in ancient times, and the person who used it was also a hero with the strength of the Scarlet Dragon Slayer. Now, if someone wanted to own this divine sword that had been stained with the blood of the Scarlet Dragon, ordinary people wouldn't be qualified. Therefore, in the Scarlet Dragon Slayer's opinion, the surrounding warriors were like breeding insects, letting them kill each other first. Only the person who killed the last one would be qualified to control it. In the end, who would have thought that there would be someone who didn't play by the rules? Instead of killing others, he attacked it. Aren't you afraid of accidentally hurting this divine sword? Chu Xiu didn't expect a sword spirit to have so many inner thoughts. Of course, it didn't matter even if he knew. Regardless of whether it was a sword or any other weapon, only a weapon held in the hands of a warrior was a true weapon. Weapons were for use, not for worship. He wasn't a member of the Hidden Sword Mountain Manor, so he wouldn't get used to this bad habit. Seeing this, Zhang Qingjun had already unsheathed the evil-slaying sword in his hand. In that instant, a piercingly cold sword light flashed, and lightning flashed. The sword light was like thunder from the 9 heavens, and it slashed 7 times in a row, almost cutting off all of Fang Qixiao's paths forward. In the past, the power of Dugu Weiwei's triple city annihilation arrow could be said to be renowned throughout the entire pugilistic world. Perhaps because it was too long ago, the other sects didn't remember, but the elderly heavenly master had told Zhang Qingjun about the terrifying feat of Dugu Weiwei's arrow piercing through the Iron Emperor Castle in the past. Thus, Zhang Qingjun didn't try to intercept that arrow. He only intercepted Fang Qixiao. However, to his surprise, Fang Qixiao's expression was one of rare seriousness. Specks of starlight shone from the shocking centipede sword in his hand, and he slashed out 7 times. The 7 sword lights didn't look very impressive, but it was as if they had transcended time and space, and they suddenly collided with Zhang Qingjun's 7 sword lights. In that instant, the specks of starlight disappeared into thin air, as if they had never existed. A hint of surprise finally appeared on Zhang Qingjun's calm face. After a moment, a smile appeared on his face, and he murmured, "I've underestimated you." Zhang Qingjun had failed. He hadn't failed at Chu Xiu's hands, but he had failed at Fang Qixiao's hands. He had made a huge mistake. He had underestimated his opponent. In fact, given Fang Qixiao's character, anyone would underestimate him. Even those who didn't know him well wouldn't be able to imagine that this fellow was the rumored top swordsman of the younger generation, Fang Qixiao. He was a disgrace to swordsmanship. Although Zhang Qingjun wasn't like others who believed that a person's character represented a person's strength, he had subconsciously underestimated Fang Qixiao. That was why he hadn't even used his full strength when he fought with Fang Qixiao earlier. It was only when Chu Xiu had arrived that he had used his full strength. Now, Zhang Qingjun realized that he was wrong. Fang Qixiao's understanding of the karma swordsmanship had already involved time and space, and his opponent's 7 sword lights had directly intercepted the source of his 7 sword lights. He had intercepted his attack from the source. He hadn't used his full strength before, but Fang Qixiao had used his full strength? Zhang Qingjun thought about it carefully. In all these years, there had been people who had seen him, Zhang Qingjun, fight with his full strength, and had also seen Chu Xiu fight with his life on the line. However, when had anyone ever seen 7th young Master Fong use his full strength? It wasn't scary to pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger. What was scary was that someone was originally a tiger but was born with a pig's skin. Not having to pretend to be a tiger was already the best disguise. Boom! The triple city annihilation arrow blasted on the slaying crimson dragon, and countless sword auras dissipated. Even the sword light on the slaying crimson dragon dimmed a little. Fang Qishao followed closely behind and grasped the hilt of the sword. The long sword suddenly erupted with an extreme resistance, but Fang Qishao directly poured powerful sword auras into it, and it was completely absorbed. After obtaining the slaying crimson dragon, Fang Qishao heaved a sigh of relief. However, he still complained to Chu Xiu, "Hey, Brother Chu, can you be a little more careful? This is the 7th divine sword in the famous sword manual. Is this how you treat a divine sword?" Chu Xiu rolled his eyes and lightly said, "You should be content. It's already good enough to get the sword. Why do you have so many demands?" Dugu Li, who was fighting fiercely with Bu Tiannan, or more accurately, being suppressed by Bu Tiannan, immediately heaved a sigh of relief. It was not in vain for him to resist Bu Tiannan for so long for Chu Xiu. The slaying crimson dragon finally fell into the hands of Sword King City. However, at this time, Dugu Li suddenly realized something. Why did he help Chu Xiu resist Dugu Li? Wouldn't it be the same if he ignored Chu Xiu and obtained the slaying crimson dragon himself? However, before Dugu Li could say anything, a violent shaking sound came from the top of the mountain. A weak formation light bloomed, but it was immediately extinguished. A large area of the mountain peak cracked open, revealing a passage. There were faint traces of an inscribed formation in it. Fang Qishao was the closest to the place. In the next moment, everyone realized what was going on. The mountain had been hollowed out, and there was another relic inside. However, this relic was too well hidden. It was so well hidden that no one realized that there was something else inside even after standing there for a long time. Just now, when Chu Xiu attacked the slaying crimson dragon with the triple annihilation arrow, it collided with the sword energy on the slaying crimson dragon. The powerful shockwave should have completely destroyed the previously damaged formation, which caused the passage inside to be exposed. Fang Qishao thought about it and took 2 steps back. He didn't want to seize the initiative. He was actually a very cautious person. If he encountered something unknown, he would rather let others go ahead. If he couldn't get the best things himself, he would rather not explore the way ahead. At that moment, several auras came from the surroundings. More than 10 martial artists went up the mountain one after another. When the slaying crimson dragon was unsheathed, the sword light shot straight into the sky. It could be seen from hundreds of miles away, and it had already attracted a group of martial artists. Of course, they came a little too late. The divine sword already had an owner. Most of the people who went up the mountain were martial Dao masters. There were 3 people at the true fire spirit refinement realm, and one of them was Wei Shia. Chu Xiu also breathed a sigh of relief and walked toward Wei Shia. There were 2 people left. One of them was Shen Baochen from the Sword Hut, and the other was the general of the Northern Yan East Mountain Army, Guangtu Beigong Bailey. Beigong Bailey was a middle-aged man in a white Confucian robe. He looked gentle, but no one would have guessed that hundreds of thousands of people had died in the hands of this general. Moreover, Chu Xiu also noticed that Sun Qili and Sun Qifan from the Sun family of River East were among the people who came. Chu Xiu couldn't help but glance at the 2 of them with a hint of gloominess. He had noticed that when Kuang Shiyue was chasing after him, these people were all by his side. They were obviously leading the way. Chapter 8:21. When Wei Shia saw Chu Xiu, he came over and asked, "Why did you use up all your strength again? It's not a good thing to do in the secret territory. In a mystic realm like this, where one could encounter all sorts of enemies and dangers, it was very dangerous to exhaust all of one's energy." Wei Shia's words were based on experience. Chu Xiu smiled bitterly and said, I didn't want to, but I met Butianan first. If I don't think of a way, that madman will really kill me. Wei Shih shook his head and said, Did you provoke Kuang Shiyue? Chu Xiu said, I didn't provoke Kuang Shiyue this time. It was Kuang Shiyue who provoked me. Elder Wei, did you see Kuang Shiyue? Wei Shih said, I didn't see Kuang Shiyue, but Qin Chaoxian saw him earlier. He was looking for you like crazy. Did you seriously injure him? Chu Xiu touched his nose and said, I didn't seriously injure him. I could only say that I tricked him. Previously, Chu Xiu used a blood shadow to lure Kuang Shiyue away. When the blood shadow's power was exhausted, Kuang Shiyue would catch up with it. At that time, Kuang Shiyue would know that he was tricked. With Kuang Shiyue's character, he would definitely be furious after knowing that he was tricked. Chu Xiu was not surprised. Wei Shih was speechless at this time. Chu Xiu's strength was really proportional to his ability to cause trouble. He had only been in there for a short period of time, but he had already provoked 2 experts in the true fire spirit refinement realm. Moreover, both of them were not the kind to be trifled with. You will stay with me during this time. Don't run around anymore. The Yinma clan's reputation was not small, but it did not mean that everyone had to care about their reputation. Chu Xiu nodded. In fact, he would have done the same even if Wei Shih didn't say so. It seemed that he had attracted too much hatred during this time. He needed to keep a low profile. However, sometimes the situation did not allow Chu Xiu to keep a low profile. For the time being, no one went down the passageway at the bottom of the mountain peak. Instead, everyone gathered to the side to observe. The level of the martial artists who entered the ruins this time was relatively high. They were all martial Dao grandmasters who had reached the real pellet state. Even if some people were weaker, they still had rich experience in the martial world. They wouldn't be like some junior martial artists who were impatient and rushed forward when they saw the benefits, regardless of whether there was any danger. They were very calm. While Chu Xiu was recovering his consumed true qi, he also moved closer to the entrance of the passageway to observe. However, with just a glance, Chu Xiu slightly frowned, and the expressions of the others were almost the same. The passageway was a bottomless staircase that extended all the way down. The passageway was engraved with blood-colored patterns. Some of them looked like paintings, while others looked like words. What made one's heart palpitate the most was the aura coming from it. It was an aura that contained resentment, hatred, blood, slaughter, and various other negative emotions. It was even to the extent that it faintly aroused the evil in everyone's hearts, causing it to seem extremely evil. But the problem was that it wasn't strange for this aura to appear in other places, but it appeared here. What is this place? This mountain peak should be one of the branches of the world's sword sect in this space. It was used to train or teach disciples. There were also sword puppets specially left for the disciples to challenge and obtain the qualifications to travel in the martial world. The aura in this passageway was very inconsistent with the location of the world's sword sect. Chu Xiu felt that it was normal to appear in a demon's den. Everyone present looked at each other and stepped into the passageway. The people present might be cautious, or perhaps they were old and prudent, but they were not timid people. They didn't dare to make a move even though the opportunity was right in front of them. Looking at the surrounding stone walls, Chu Xiu suddenly felt that these words were a little familiar. There were some ancient people's words mixed within, just like what Chu Xiu had seen in the palace previously. However, they were a little different. Even Lu Jianghu, who was proficient in these words, couldn't understand them. It was as if these words were carved by someone in an extremely deranged state. The more one looked at them, the more chills they felt. Chu Xiu asked in a low voice, "What is written here? Why isn't it us? Unfair. 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 It's the same calamity. They are the ones going through the calamity. Why are we the ones going through the calamity? Revenge. Revenge. Revenge." Chu Xiu's low voice immediately attracted the attention of the others. Wei Shuya and Du Guli looked at Chu Xiu with slight astonishment. There were very few martial artists in the pugilistic world who understood the ancient people's words. Only some formation masters or divination masters who frequently came into contact with these things would understand a little. Some of the people present might have learned some of these words from ancient books. However, only Wei Shuya and Du Guli could be considered to be familiar with them. After all, they were experienced people in the pugilistic world. They had more time and experience than the martial artists present. While they were proficient in martial arts, they had also read a lot of miscellaneous books. These ancient people's words were like that. However, a young man like Chu Xiu actually understood them. In particular, the impression that Chu Xiu gave people was that he was only good at killing and violence. It was unexpected that he was actually quite knowledgeable. The deeper they went, the more intense the bone-piercing cold and resentment became. Moreover, the passageway seemed to have no end. Everyone gradually felt that something was wrong. Even if the mountain was empty, everyone should be able to reach the bottom by now. However, the passageway seemed to have no end. At that moment, Wei Shuya suddenly said, "Wait." Everyone present subconsciously looked at him. Wei Shuya said in a low voice, "I'm afraid we have already fallen into an array formation." Du Guli frowned and said, "Array formation? The only array formation above has already been destroyed. How can there be an array formation here?" Wei Shuya pointed at the words engraved on the surrounding walls and said, "These words are the ancient people's words. They carry the power to absorb the power of heaven and earth. Coupled with the overflowing resentment in this place, after tens of thousands of years, I'm afraid it has already formed a natural array formation. Its power is even more troublesome than an array formation that was set up by humans." At this point, Wei Shuya's brows furrowed tightly. If it was an array formation that was set up by humans, it would actually be easier to deal with. There were only two methods to break an array formation, the technical method and the brute force method. Those array formation masters, such as Black Marshal Gates Pu Yangyi, usually broke an array formation by breaking the array patterns. This way, the array formation itself would not be damaged and there would be no backlash. As for the brute force method, it was much simpler. One could directly destroy the array patterns with brute force. However, one would have to suffer the backlash of the array formation. But now, how to break an array formation that was naturally formed between heaven and earth? Even if an array formation grandmaster came, there was actually no good way. If it was not set up by humans, then there was no way to break it. This was a natural array that had been accumulated for tens of thousands of years. How could it be broken? Du Guli sneered and said, "What heaven and earth array? I don't believe that there is an array in this world that can't be broken." As soon as his voice fell, Du Guli waved his hand and boundless sword chi burst out. The fiery sword chi directly illuminated the boundless passage and burst out with a loud bang. Even the real pellet state martial artists hid far away. But after the sword chi burst out, the wall was still the wall. There was not even the slightest change. At this time, Bu Tiannan, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said, "Old Du Gu, don't waste your energy. I'm afraid we are really trapped in an array," as Old Wei said. "Moreover, this formation has already separated the space. We are no longer in the mountain, nor are we underground, but in a separate space. Unless your sword can cut the space, it will be useless even if you slash 10,000 times." Du Guli glared at Bu Tiannan, but he did admit that what Bu Tiannan said made sense. Although this person was a temperamental madman, when Bu Tiannan was not crazy, he was quite accurate in seeing things. At this time, Chu Xiu realized that Wei Shuya's reputation in the martial world was really quite high. Others, whether they were from the righteous path or the demonic path, as long as they didn't have a life and death feud with Wei Shuya, they would respectfully call him Old Wei. They called Old Wei not only because of Wei Shuya's seniority, but also because of his heroic deeds as the 5 great demons of the 9th Heaven Mountain. Although the 5 great demons of the 9th Heaven Mountain only existed for a short time before they were annihilated by the righteous path martial artists, Even the righteous path martial artists who annihilated them had to admit that although their positions were different, these 5 people could be called heroes of the present age. Wuxia said solemnly, "You guys, now is not the time to quarrel. We are now trapped in such an array space. Although there is no danger for the time being trapped here and unable to get out is our biggest danger. If we are trapped here for one more day, we will gain nothing. We can only watch the people outside explore the ruins and gain benefits. Don't wait until the secret realm collapses. If we are still wandering around here, we will become a joke." Everyone present nodded, and their faces were a little ugly. What Wuxia said made sense. Being trapped in this place was already the biggest problem for them. Zhang Qingzhen said solemnly, "Old Wei, you are the oldest and the most experienced here. You should make the decision." Zhang Qingzhen's words had basically represented the attitude of other real pellet state martial artists. Let go of the differences between good and evil, let's work together to find a way out. Among them, the one who could represent the righteous path most was not Dugu Li or Shen Baochen, but Zhang Qingzhen from the Celestial Master Mansion. Wuxia nodded and said solemnly, "Everyone, this space is bottomless. It should be said that we have been going around in circles. It is useless to go on. If we want to break this array, we still have to solve the problem from the source. As for where the source is, it is actually the things engraved in the surrounding murals and the specious words. This is the trial place of the world's sword sections. Why is there such a resentful channel here? This is worth investigating." Chapter 822. The surrounding words and pictures were very messy. Even if they could recognize the words of the ancient people, they would not be able to gather them into a complete content. However, following Wuxia's words, the surrounding people turned around and studied the things written on it in detail. They really did find some clues. The words and pictures were not written by a single person. Instead, they were written by a group of people. There were slight differences in their handwriting. They arranged them according to the notes and understood some of the contents. They finally knew the reason why the resentment in this place was so strong. At the same time, when they read it, they felt chills running down their spines. According to what was written on it, the ancient calamity was about to arrive. The sword sect of the world had a way to pass the calamity. However, only a small portion of the people would be able to pass the calamity. It could be said that only 10% of the people in the sword sect of the world would be able to pass the calamity. The rest would be abandoned. As for how the 10% of people would be chosen, according to fairness, other than the sect leader who stood at the peak of the sect, the rest should be decided by drawing lots. That would be the fairest way. However, in reality, how many people in this world could be truly fair? The sword sect of the world could not do it. Hence, among the 10% of people, a portion of them were the mainstays of the sect. There was also a portion of them who were talented young disciples. They were the future seeds of the sword sect of the world. As for the last portion, they were not strong and they were not talented either. However, they were the disciples or their relatives of the elders of the sword sect of the world. As for the remaining people, it was very simple. They would be abandoned. However, even if they were to be abandoned, it would be very difficult to do. Because there were too many disciples left, and the 10% of his people wanted to take away everything in the world's sword sect. In order to prevent them from finding out, the person in charge of the world's sword sect of that generation made a rather vicious decision. The place that Chu Xiao and the rest found was called the 6 Illusory Realms. It was one of the many spatial secret realms that were discovered by the people in the ancient times. Moreover, there were 5 other secret realms with similar environments. Hence, they were called the 6 Illusory Realms. Under the trial grounds, the sword sect of the world had carved out a huge space and laid down a seal. After summoning the rest of the people under the pretext of a meeting, they tricked them into this place. Finally, they directly sealed the array formation, trapping all of them here to death. This move could be said to be quite vicious. Before the Great Calamity came, if these people did not die in the hands of the Great Calamity, it was very likely that they would die in their own hands. As for the last part of the message, it was somewhat unclear. After the people trapped here went crazy, the words they wrote also carried a hint of madness. There were words of revenge, blood sacrifice, and all sorts of malicious words. It was unknown what they were trying to express, or if they were simply cursing. After looking at these things, everyone present suddenly fell silent. To be honest, the impact of this matter was quite great. Even if it was them, they wouldn't dare to imagine what it would feel like to personally bury 90% of their sect's disciples. However, on the other hand, if they were in his shoes, they might not have done as well as the leader of the world sword sect in the past. The martial Dao masters present were all from big sections. Even if they were not clan leaders, they were still the mainstays of their respective sections. They knew how complicated these things would be when a great calamity was about to befall them. The supreme experts of the sect would definitely have to leave. Without them, what would the sect rely on to support itself? Also, the disciples with great potential and the true backbone of the sect must be brought along. As for the disciples who were related to the sect, wouldn't the other experts resent them if they were to be left here? Hence, the ones to be sacrificed could only be the disciples who were not related to the sect and were not strong enough. If the leader of the World Sword sect in the past was soft-hearted and wanted to be fair, it would definitely cause the World Sword sect to experience an internal strife before they got through the great calamity. Moreover, the number of people left in the end might not even be 10% of the people that he had chosen. However, the leader of the World Sword sect made the decision to sacrifice 90% of the disciples with a wave of his hand. He was ruthless enough. However, even if everyone understood what was written, what use would it be? The disciples of the World Sword sect who were trapped here were probably all dead. Now, their resentment and death aura had combined with the words that they had written to form a formation. There was no solution to it at all. They wanted to take revenge. Could it be that they had to find the people of the World Sword sect in the past and let them kill them? The crowd was discussing in whispers. At that moment, Chu Xiu's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. He suddenly said to Lu Fengxian, who was next to him, "Brother Lu, what do you think about this? Do you think that the leader of the World Sword sect did the right thing or not?" Lu Fengxian was stunned. Then, he scoffed coldly and said, "Of course not. Sacrificing 90% of the people in exchange for the lives of 10%. Why? On what basis should the 90% of the people die?" The most infuriating thing is that among the 10% of people, there are some who are simply trash. Their strength and potential are not even comparable to the 90% of the people who were sacrificed. Just because they are related to the sect, they can live. It's really too unfair. At that moment, a cold light suddenly flashed across Chu Xiu's eyes. He formed a Buddhist seal with his hand and displayed the colorless sealing palm print. As the Buddhist light shone brightly, a mustard seed appeared in his palm and smashed towards Lu Fengxian's head. The ancient halberd in Lu Fengxian's hand abruptly swung out, blocking the colorless sealing palm. However, he was also blasted back a few steps. He roared furiously, "Chu Xiu! Are you crazy? Why did you hit me?" When the crowd saw this scene, they were dumbfounded. They could not figure out what was going on. They all knew about the relationship between Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian. The two of them had been good friends for many years. In fact, they had already known each other when Chu Xiu was still insignificant. Lu Fengxian had once dared to help Chu Xiu when he was besieged by the righteous Dao Alliance. And Chu Xiu had barged into the Yunu Palace alone for Lu Fengxian and almost destroyed the entire Yunu Palace. Of course, the Yunu Palace's current situation was no different from being destroyed. These two were brothers who had been through life and death together. Why did they fall out now? Chu Xiu said coldly, "What kind of ghost are you? Speak, where is brother Lu?" Lu Fengxian said angrily, "What are you talking about? I'm right here. Where else can I be?" Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Your acting is not bad. Unfortunately, no matter how good you are, you can only pretend to be a shell. There are some things that you can't pretend to be. Do you know how many flaws you have revealed?" Without waiting for Lu Fengxian to speak, Chu Xiu said directly, "You've always been by my side. I don't even know when Brother Lu was replaced by you. However, I had a feeling that Brother Lu, who had always been by my side, had suddenly disappeared. Of course, this feeling can't be real. It can't be considered evidence. That's why I asked you that question. Who is right and who is wrong? You're standing on the side of the 90% who were sacrificed. You think Brother Lu is a kind person and the answer is definitely the same. But you're wrong. Brother Lu doesn't think that this matter is wrong. But he won't stand on the side of the ruthless world sword sex leader. Because in Brother Lu's heart, there are many things that are not right or wrong. It's just a personal choice. If you choose right, then it's right. If you choose wrong, then it's wrong. This is the key reason why Brother Lu can be on the same side as me, a demon. At the same time, he has countless good friends in the pugilistic world. He only stands on his own side. He never stands on the side of others. Of course, this question is just a prelude. Even if you're wrong, I'll just be a little more suspicious. But later on, you'll make more and more mistakes. You can't imagine the friendship between Brother Lu and me. Even if I suddenly attack him, he won't be angry enough to call my name. He'll be worried if something happened to me. Of course, there's one last point. You can imitate many things. You can even imitate Brother Lu's aura perfectly. But you can't imitate his unparalleled weapon. Previously, when Brother Lu was fighting with Zhang Qingzhen and Zhong Xian, he had already used his unparalleled weapon. Now that he's in such a dangerous place, why would he keep his unparalleled weapon? As a result, the halberd in your hand is not the unparalleled weapon. Such a big loophole, do you think I'm blind and can't see it? As Chu Xiu said a series of words, the faces of everyone present suddenly changed. They stepped away from the surrounding people and looked at each other vigilantly. Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian had such a close relationship. Since he said so many doubtful points, it was almost certain that Lu Fengxian was replaced. Although Lu Fengxian was a younger generation martial artist, his strength was also considered upper class among the many real pellet state martial artists present. Now that he was replaced, would there be someone among the people present who was also replaced? At this time, the face of Lu Fengxian on the opposite side suddenly began to change. His whole body began to melt like a wax figure. After the outer skin melted, there was a black mist-like thing floating in the air inside, leaving only two scarlet hideous eyes that were blooming with endless killing intent. You are right, I am indeed a ghost, but I am a malicious ghost who has been waiting for 10,000 years for revenge. We have waited for too long. What is right and what is wrong, we don't care so much. Those people owed us back then, we will get it back sooner or later. As its voice faded, the surrounding passageway disappeared, and what appeared before everyone's eyes was an incomparably pitch-black space. There were dense black mist-like malicious ghosts floating around them. They were also staring at them with scarlet eyes. The whole scene suddenly made people's hair stand up. Chapter 8:23. Being surrounded by a group of densely packed ghosts, everyone present suddenly felt a little uncomfortable in their hearts. Although it wasn't fear, they at least felt a little creepy. They were able to reach the real pellet state, and they had experienced a lot of bloody battles. However, they had killed people before, so how should they kill ghosts? Perhaps Zhang Qingzhen's thunder was more useful at this time. At this time, Shen Baochen, who had been silent all this while, suddenly said, "Don't play tricks there. If people can become ghosts after death, then this world would have been full of evil spirits. It's just a vicious spirit condensed from the resentment of thousands of people. If there was no formation of this natural array, how could you be born by chance? The natural array has no foundation, but you yourself are the eye of the array." Hearing this, the hot-tempered Du Guli immediately snorted coldly. A scorching sword aura swept out and directly slashed the ghost into pieces. At the same time, the scorching flames began to burning the densely packed ghosts that surrounded everyone. The entire pitch-black space was illuminated by the flames. At this time, Chu Xiu finally saw Lu Fengxian's figure. Lu Fengxian, who had disappeared, was actually sitting cross-legged behind those ghosts. However, his aura was weak at this moment, as if he was in a deep sleep. There was also a blood-colored array pattern beneath his feet. Only this array pattern seemed to have been carved by someone. The ghosts were burned to ashes, and everyone present was stunned. This thing had unknowingly swapped out Lu Fengxian, who wasn't weak. Furthermore, it had an extremely strange appearance. Who would have thought that it was so weak that it couldn't even take a single blow from Du Guli? But then everyone realized that whether it was Du Guli or Wei Shiya, their expressions were not relaxed. Because right now, they were still trapped in this space. At this moment, there was a strange laughter, and the ghost appeared out of thin air again. He laughed and said, "Don't waste your energy. In here, I am an immortal existence. You can't kill me, let alone leave." At this point, almost everyone present understood what was going on. That group of ghosts from before was dead. They were merely the resentful projections of the martial practitioners of the sword sect who had been sacrificed in the past. Just as Shen Baochen had said, after 10,000 years, under this natural tactical matrix, these resentments finally formed a ferocious spirit. Therefore, it was also them, a collection of everyone's resentment. However, Du Guli didn't seem to have given up. He continued to attack. The ghost didn't even put up any defense and allowed him to kill it. However, in the end, it always reappeared in the air. It didn't even lose the slightest bit of strength. Everyone's hearts sank again when they saw this. What kind of enemy was the most difficult to deal with? Like this thing, you don't even know how to deal with it. That's what's really hard to deal with. At this time, the ghostly being pointed at LV Fengxian and laughed strangely. "I'm sure you all know what happened to us. 10% live, 90% die. Lord Sect Master was ruthless in the past, but I also want to see if you can be so ruthless. This young man has LV Wenho's aura in his body. I didn't expect that after 10,000 years, that ancient ferocious demon god still left behind an inheritance or bloodline. Anyway, no matter what, the aura in his body is suitable for me to possess. However, there seems to be something left behind by LV Wenho in his body that's resisting. Therefore, I'll give you a chance now. Help me destroy his primordial spirit. As long as you let me possess him successfully and let me have a body, I will naturally leave this place and let you go. Do you want one person to die or a dozen people to die? It's your choice. The majority or the minority, I believe that you will definitely make a wise choice." The ghost kept laughing strangely, as if he was very happy to see everyone else immersed in such a dilemma. Actually, he was wrong. Apart from Chu Xiu, the rest of the people present didn't have much of a relationship with Lu Fengxian. To them, it was worth sacrificing Lu Fengxian in exchange for them to leave this godforsaken place. Thus, there were many people that were tempted by the offer. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and looked around. He didn't say a word. He had never been afraid to speculate about others with the greatest evil intentions. It didn't matter whether the people present were righteous seniors or famous martial arts figures. It was not difficult for them to sacrifice an insignificant person. Chu Xiu also didn't bother to reason with them. He said that the ghost's words couldn't be trusted, and so on. At this time, it was usually unreasonable. His brain was working quickly, thinking of a way to break out of this situation. Chu Xiu didn't believe that he really couldn't get out of this place. If the strength of this vengeful spirit was really so strong, maybe he would have broken through the seal long ago. Why should he continue to be trapped here? While thinking, Chu Xiu asked, "Lu Jianghe, don't just watch the show. Do you have any ideas?" Lu Jianghe spread out his hands and said, "When I encounter this kind of situation, I usually go on a killing spree. Who asked me to be so strong at that time, second only to the 4 great demon lords? At that time, if anyone dared to touch my dog, I would suck all the blood in his body, dry him, and hang him in front of the mountain gate of his sect, let alone kill his people. Think about how powerful I was back then. Can't you show some respect to me? Why do you always call me by my name? After all, you have learned my blood god demonic technique. It's not too much to call me Lord Demon Lord, right? Chu Xiu didn't care about Lu Jianghe's nagging. When he heard Lu Jianghe's first sentence, his eyes suddenly lit up. When encountering a problem that couldn't be solved, a killing spree was actually the best solution. At that moment, everyone present fell silent. Although they all agreed on using Lu Fengxian's life to get them out of this godforsaken place, no one spoke first. Although most of them thought so, some things were better said than done. At the very least, even if they agreed, they couldn't be the first to say it. Therefore, no one spoke first. However, at that moment, the corners of Duan Tianlang's mouth curled into a sinister smile. Previously, when he was chased by Chu Xiu, it could be said that he was extremely miserable. Burning his blood essence and using a secret technique to escape had not only seriously injured him, but it had also damaged his own source. Even if he recovered his strength in the future, the damage to his source would be impossible to make up for. At the very least, it would cause his strength to plummet. At the very least, it would cause him to be unable to improve for the rest of his life. It might even affect his lifespan. This was something that Duan Tianlang absolutely couldn't tolerate. He hated Chu Xiu to the core. Duan Tianlang knew that Lu Fengxian was Chu Xiu's good friend. Although he couldn't kill Chu Xiu now, he could kill Lu Fengxian first and make Chu Xiu suffer for a while. However, before Duan Tianlang could speak first, Chu Xiu suddenly walked out. Everyone present thought that Chu Xiu would definitely ask for sympathy for Lu Fengxian, but who would have thought that Chu Xiu would point at Sun Qili and Sun Qifan and say coldly, "Evildoers, it's fine that you pretended to be Brother Lu just now. How dare you pretend to be Brother Sun now? Show your true colors." The Sun brothers were stunned when they heard that. Since when were they impersonated? Moreover, we aren't that familiar with you, Chu Xiu. Brother Sun? They have never addressed each other as brothers. In terms of seniority, the Sun brothers were one generation older than Chu Xiu. Not to mention the Sun brothers, even the others couldn't react in time. But at this time, Chu Xiu had already made his move. The heavenly demon dance erupted with monstrous devil chi, slashing directly toward the Sun brothers. The power was like seeing the enemy who killed their father, and they couldn't wait to kill the other party immediately. Everyone present frowned. No one could understand what Chu Xiu was doing. Of course, they didn't believe in impersonation. Previously, the ghost impersonated Lu Fengxian only because he wanted to seize Lu Fengxian's body. Now that he was about to succeed, why would he still pretend to be the Sun brothers? The power of Chu Xiu's saber was incomparably powerful. Even though the Sun brothers had used all their strength to resist, they were already at a disadvantage after a few moves. Previously, the Sun brothers and the other four joined forces to besiege Chu Xiu, but they were still easily defeated by Chu Xiu. Although they each had their own thoughts, so the five of them didn't use all their strength, now the Sun brothers were shocked to find that even if they used all their strength, the result would still be the same. Duan Tianlang tried to persuade Bu Tiannan, Big Dragon Head, this Chu Xiu is clearly trying to divert our attention. Stop him, don't let him kill her. Bu Tiannan sneered, don't waste your energy to provoke me. I know you want to kill Chu Xiu, and I will do it even if you don't say it. You have to look at the master before beating a dog. I warned him before, but he still hurt you like this. Obviously, he doesn't take me, Bu Tiannan, seriously. Duan Tianlang was delighted, but then he suddenly realized that he had to look at the master before beating a dog. Although what he had done all this time seemed to be Bu Tiannan's most flattering lackey, it still hurt his pride to hear Bu Tiannan say it so bluntly. Just as Bu Tiannan moved, Wei Shiya stood up and said, Bu Tiannan, there is no hatred between your Blue Dragon Society and my Yinma clan. Now that you have offended the righteous martial arts world, do you still want to offend my Yinma clan? Bu Tiannan stood with his hands behind his back, but the killing intent around him had condensed to the point that it was almost tangible. He pointed to his face and said, I am a person who cares about face. If someone doesn't give me face, I will kill him. If the Great Guangming Temple dared to destroy my Northern Yan division, I will go to the Great Guangming Temple to ask for an explanation. Chu Xiu touched my people, and under the premise that I warned him, that is a slap to my face. Elder Wei, I will give you face, but the most I can do is to let Chu Xiu die a little better. But if you want to stop me, let alone your Yinhua clan, even if Yi Xiaonan comes, the result will be the same. Chapter 824. Bu Tiannan was recognized as a madman in Jianghu. He did things without considering the consequences. The Blue Dragon Society was just an assassin organization that hid in the dark. However, when the Heavenly Sin Division was destroyed, Bu Tiannan dared to go to the Great Light Temple and fight with Su Yun. This was something that the leader of the Blue Dragon Society would never do. In fact, even when he wasn't the Azure Dragon Society's great dragon head, the things he did were quite outrageous. When other assassins of the Blue Dragon Society went to kill their targets, most of them would assassinate them. They would find the moment when the target was most careless, then they would strike and immediately escape. For example, when Chu Xiu was an assassin of the Azure Dragon Association in the past, he would still use some schemes. For example, when he annihilated the Yu clan, he used a psychological attack, and in the end, he forcibly annihilated an entire clan by himself. Anyway, whether it was a silent assassination or a trap to kill, they were all methods that the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society often used. But Bu Tiannan was different. If he wanted to kill someone, he would just stand in front of them and say that he wanted to kill them. Then, he would kill all the people in front of him and finally kill the target. Then, the mission would be completed. In Bu Tiannan's understanding, as long as he killed people, that was enough. Therefore, for so many years, Bu Tiannan did not carry out the most missions and did not have the highest completion rate, but he definitely killed the most people. Such a strange way of thinking was quite simple. Chu Xiu did not give him face and slapped his face, so he deserved to die. Even if Wei Shiya was in front of him, he was not afraid and directly fought with Wei Shiya. Just now, Bu Tiannan could easily suppress Du Guli, but now, facing Wei Shiya, it was not so easy. As for the Sun brothers, they were already in imminent danger. Chu Xiu had already executed the Great Blood Shadow technique. More than 10 blood shadows circled around the two of them at an extremely fast speed. All sorts of martial techniques smashed down on them. Blood chi flew everywhere. There was the blood chi from the Great Blood Shadow technique and the blood chi from the two of them vomiting blood. The two of them could not hold on any longer and shouted, "Senior Shen, save me." Actually, in terms of age and seniority, Shen Baochen was not considered too old. In the true fire spirit refinement realm, he was considered one of the youngest. Therefore, in terms of age, he was actually in the same generation as the Sun brothers. But now, the two of them had even addressed him as senior. Clearly, they were scared. Shen Baochen of the Forgetful Sword Hut was a very low-key person. It should be said that the entire Forgetful Sword Hut was very low-key. It was just like the martial arts they cultivated, incomparably calm. In the beginning, Shen Baochen did not intend to interfere in this matter. But now that the two of them had asked for help, Shen Baochen couldn't ignore them. Just as he walked out, Fang Qi Shao tugged at Du Guli's sleeve and said, "Uncle Master, do me a favor and stop Shen Baochen. Just now, Brother Lu also helped me fight for the slaying Scarlet Dragon. Now that he is in trouble, I can't possibly not help him, right? You're not helping Chu Xiu, you're helping Lu Fengxian." Du Guli snorted softly, but he did not refuse. Instead, he stepped forward to welcome Shen Baochen. If it was to save Chu Xiu, Du Guli would definitely not help. No matter how much Fang Qi Shao persuaded him, it was useless. However, it had to be said that Lu Fengxian had her own charm. Even when Du Guli saw Lu Fengxian, he did not feel any disgust. In fact, he even felt some admiration for her. The warriors of Sword King City were generally ill-tempered. Furthermore, they thought highly of themselves and did not understand human emotions, so it was easy for them to offend people. Some of the higher-ups of Sword King City knew about this, but they could not change it. They only hoped that the next generation would change. In the end, the next generation really did change. However, it was only Feng Qixiao who changed. However, when they saw Feng Qixiao's behavior, Sword King City could not wait for him to not change. At the thought of handing Sword King City over to such a fellow in the future, Deguli felt vexed. If Feng Qixiao could be like Lu Fengxian, who did things sincerely and generously and made friends all over the Jianghu, how good would that be? Therefore, Deguli found Lu Fengxian very pleasing to the eye. He did not mind helping someone he found pleasing to the eye. Shen Baochen, why are you interfering in this matter? Deguli stepped forward. They were all from the 5 major sword sects. Sword King City's relationship with the Forgetful Sword Hut was not good, but it was not bad either. Occasionally, there would be some friction because of the position of the 5 major sword sects leader, but they could still talk. Shen Baochen frowned and said, "What else? Watch Chu Xiu kill the Sun brothers. What about the dignity of the righteous path?" The Forgetful Sword Hut was one of the 5 major sword sects. Although it was not like the Celestial Master Abode or the Great Light Temple, which belonged to the righteous path, it was still considered part of the righteous path. He did not know what Chu Xiu was planning, but he could not watch Chu Xiu kill the Sun brothers, who were also part of the righteous path, right under his nose. Deguli curled his lips and said, "The Sun family's conduct is considered the righteous path?" Old Man Sun is a classic example of someone who does not act early without benefits. When faced with danger, he is the one who shrinks his head the fastest. He is very cunning. You are part of the righteous path, but who knows what the Sun family is? In the past, when the Kunlun Devil cult was still around, the Sun family fawned over the Kunlun Devil cult to the extreme, sending pills, weapons, and even daughters. But during the righteous path and demonic path war, did the Sun family make a move? They did not even let out a fart. Shen Baochen shook his head and said, "Even so, I cannot turn a blind eye. Otherwise, how will the reputation of the Forgetful Sword Hut be preserved?" Deguli pulled out his long sword that was burning with flames and said lightly, "All right, don't talk so much nonsense. The Forgetful Sword Hut wants its reputation, but the Sword King City does not. Today's matter is not your fault. You are meddling in the business of the Sword King City. Perhaps we have not sparred for many years. I want to see just how strong your cultivation of the sword path has become." With that, Deguli also started fighting with Shen Baochen. Of course, the two of them did not have any killing intent in this battle. It was just a sparring session. Deguli did it partly because of Feng Qixiao's pleading, and partly because he admired Lu Fengxian. Shen Baochen only did it because of his reputation. If he had not seen this scene today, he would not have cared about these things. So although the two of them were fighting fiercely, it was actually just a sparring session. The 2 pairs of true fire spirit refinement realm cultivators had already started fighting. Only Beigong Bailey watched silently from the side. He did not make a move, nor did he express any opinions. This Northern Yen general of the Eastern Mountain Army was calm and composed when he was quiet. No one could tell what he was thinking. Perhaps it was best for him to watch from the sidelines when it came to such matters. Chu Xiu was the Northern Yen subduing Marshal Hall's Hall Master. He was also a Northern Yen man, so it would not be good for him not to help. But at the same time, he knew that Xiang Long wanted to suppress Chu Xiu. But now, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, if he attacked Chu Xiu, it would ruin the reputation of the Northern Yen court. Thus, watching the battle without saying a word was the best answer. They were in a stalemate. Most of the others were also silent about Chu Xiu's pursuit of the Sun brothers. It was none of their business. They wanted to see how things would turn out in the end. But at this time, the ghost continued to swim and roar, but no one paid attention to it. It wanted to provoke the crowd to attack and kill Lu Fengxian, but now it was completely disrupted by Chu Xiu's killing spree. None of the people present were idiots. Although they did not know how this fellow had managed to swap LV Fengxian out without anyone noticing, this thing did not kill anyone else. Obviously, it was not because it was kind, but because it actually did not have such an ability. At this time, the Sun brothers had been pushed to the limit by Chu Xiu. The two brothers had practiced martial arts together when they were young and had a very good understanding of each other. But in front of Chu Xiu, they were easily suppressed and had no chance to fight back. Sun Qili resisted with difficulty and gritted his teeth. Chu Xiu, are you really going to be ruthless and kill us all? My Jiangdong Sun family has never provoked you. Chu Xiu sneered and said, you haven't provoked me? How naive. Back in the Yu Palace, do you dare say that you didn't want to hit me when I was down? Besides, I'm saving you. You have been possessed by that evil ghost, and now I'm going to help you. The great blood shadow technique was fully displayed, and more than 10 blood shadows rushed toward the Sun brothers with whistling afterimages. That kind of power was simply exterminating them. The famous ice true qi of the Jiangdong Sun family was said to be able to freeze things, whether it was gang qi or primordial spirit. Seeing that Chu Xiu was still closing in, the two looked at each other and formed a seal with their hands. In an instant, a bone-piercing cold air filled the air. Everything around them began to freeze, and even the heaven and earth yuan qi began to freeze in this cold air. The world was frozen. However, this astonishing cold qi was not only draining the Sun brothers' true qi, but it was also draining their own origin qi. As the cold air grew stronger, it directly froze the dozen or so blood shadows within it. However, their faces were already as pale as a sheet of paper. It was extremely frightening. What this move consumed was not their own blood essence, but their own yuan qi. It was possible to recover part of the blood essence consumed, but if one consumed yuan qi, without heavenly materials and earthly treasures and careful cultivation, it was likely to leave hidden injuries that could never be healed, and even affect one's lifespan. But seeing that the blood shadow sealed in the cold air was still Chu Xiu, the Sun brothers also breathed a sigh of relief. But before they could let out a sigh of relief, Chu Xiu, who was sealed in the cold air, slowly formed a seal with his hands. A scorching Buddhist light burst out, and a phantom of Vairocana appeared behind Chu Xiu. In an instant, the chanting of Buddhist chants broke everything. Sun-changing technique. Vairocana shone through the ages, and the endless cold air melted in an instant. In the Buddhist light, there was also a faint demonic aura and blood color, adding a trace of evil. Evil ghost, you dare to resist? Today, I will release you from purgatory. Sun Qili, who had always been very restrained, cursed, you are the ghost. Your whole family is ghost. Chu Xiu. You started a massacre for no reason. If we die here today, the Sun family will not rest until you die, and you, Chu Xiu, die without a complete corpse. Chapter 825. The Sun brothers were forced to a dead end, and they kept cursing at Chu Xiu. But at the moment, all they could do was curse. There were so many people present, and seeing that there were two powerhouses in the true fire spirit refinement realm standing on Chu Xiu's side, they were even more afraid to intervene. However, just as Chu Xiu was about to completely kill these two people, a flash of lightning suddenly appeared in front of him. It was Zhang Qingjin who intercepted him. Chu Xiu held the saber and frowned slightly, saying, "You want to protect them? As far as I know, you are not a nosy person." Zhang Qingjin said lightly, "I really don't like to meddle in other people's business, but this is not a matter of others' business. That ghost instigated us to kill Lu Fengxian and brother Lu. His heart is vicious and insidious. Even if he can really exchange his life for us to get out, I will not agree. But now, in order to confuse us, you want to kill the two of them to protect Lu Fengxian. Using the lives of two people in exchange for the life of one person, what is the difference between you and that ghost?" Difference? The difference is that as long as I kill them, we really have a chance to get out. Personal grudges, Zhang Qingjin, are you sure you want to care about this? Zhang Qingjin also took a step forward and said in a deep voice, "It's not that I want to care, but I have to care about this matter. The righteous martial arts world has the righteous martial arts world's rules, and the Taoist Master Mansion also has the Taoist Master Mansion's rules. In the righteous martial arts world, there were actually only a few forces that were qualified to represent the entire righteous path. The Great Light Temple was one, and the Sabodhi Monastery was another. However, the actions of the Taoist Master's abode were different from those of the Great Light Temple and the Sabodhi Monastery. The Taoists were pure and did nothing. Similarly, the Taoist Master's abode also knew that the evil in this world could not be eradicated. Therefore, everything that the Taoist Master's abode did was not so much to eliminate evil, but to control evil. As long as the people of the Devil Dao didn't go too far, such as destroying a family under their noses, they were generally too lazy to care. Similarly, the Celestial Master Mansion would not care about the internal strife between the martial arts world forces as long as the conflict was controlled to a certain extent. Because of the Celestial Master Abode's actions, the entire West Chu martial arts world had developed even more than the Northern Yen. Regardless of whether it was the righteous or the demonic, they all controlled their own destructive power to a certain extent, reducing a lot of internal friction. This was also the reason why Zhang Qingjun intervened. If Chu Xiu really killed someone because of a personal grudge, he might not care. But now, it seemed that Chu Xiu wanted to use the opportunity of killing the Sun brothers to distract them and indirectly save Lu Fengxian. Zhang Qingjun absolutely could not tolerate killing two people to save one. Chu Xiu looked at Zhang Qingjun with a little surprise. Perhaps he had to get to know this young celestial master again. He had always thought that Zhang Qingjun was the kind of person who was extremely indifferent. In fact, this was indeed the case. The famous young celestial master Zhang Qingjun was actually not the kind of righteous chivalrous man. But in his heart, there was a balance and a rule. This balance was given to him by the old celestial master. Although he did not know what chivalry was, nor did he know what righteousness was, as long as he could keep the balance in his heart, the reputation and status of the Celestial Master Mansion would be eternal. Sure enough, after he said this, the Sun brothers looked at Zhang Qingjun with deep gratitude. When they were in despair, only Zhang Qingjun came forward to save them. Even though the Sun brothers were utilitarian, they could not help but feel grateful to Zhang Qingjun. The Celestial Master Mansion has its rules, but I, Chu Xiu, also have my own rules. Zhang Qingjun said, "Oh? What rules?" Chu Xiu took a step forward and said coldly, "That is, no one can stop me if I want to kill someone." As Chu Xiu's voice fell, boundless blood qi emanated from his body. Strands of bloodlines were extending, which was very strange and terrifying. Chu Xiu did not bother to explain to Zhang Qingjun that the Sun brothers had led the way, which led Kuang Shiyue to kill him. As long as he, Chu Xiu, wanted to kill someone, no matter how long it took, no one could stop him. Zhang Qingjun frowned, and the evil-slaying sword in his hand surged with lightning. As soon as the sword was unsheathed, it turned into a lightning pattern and slashed down. Those bloodlines were torn apart by the sword qi and lightning. But at this time, Chu Xiu also charged toward Zhang Qingjun with the heavenly demon dance in his hand and began to fight with him. It was not easy to defeat Zhang Qingjun, but it was equally difficult for Zhang Qingjun to stop Chu Xiu from killing someone. Previously, Zhang Qingjun had cut the bloodlines extended by Chu Xiu into pieces, but those bloodlines did not really dissipate. Instead, they turned into a blood mist that permeated this space. In particular, the Sun brothers had been completely wrapped in this blood mist. At this moment, a trembling sound suddenly came from the blood mist, like a heartbeat. The Sun brothers' hearts also suddenly trembled. Then, the frequency of the trembling became faster and faster. The Sun brothers' hearts also beat wildly, completely out of their control. At this time, Zhang Qingjun also realized that something was wrong. He wanted to stop it, but he found that in the face of such a strange method, unless he could kill Chu Xiu, there was no other way to stop it at all. The frequency of the beating became faster and faster, causing the Sun brothers' faces, which were already pale, to become as red as blood. In the end, with a loud bang, their chests directly exploded, and blood immediately sprayed all over the place. Everyone present felt a chill in their hearts, and their eyes were full of fear as they looked at Chu Xiu. Although the Sun brothers had used all their strength to resist Chu Xiu, and their vitality was injured, which led to them being easily killed by Chu Xiu. But this strange method of dying without even knowing how they died still made their hearts tremble. At this time, Lu Jianghe laughed proudly in Chu Xiu's mind. My blood god demonic technique has already been very meticulous in the control of qi and blood. It's just a small trick, and they were shocked to this extent. What a country bumpkin. Chu Xiu snorted lightly and said, "Stop showing off. Take out your old blood demon hall's formation." Lu Jiang, he said in surprise, "What do you want my old blood demon hall's formation for?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "Don't play dumb. I don't believe that with your eyesight, you can't see the flaws of this vengeful spirit. Help me this time, and there will be benefits in the future. I won't forget you." Lu Jiang, he curled his lips and said, "If you really have a conscience, you should let me out and nourish me with your blood so that I can reconstruct my body." Although that was what Lu Jiang he said, he also knew that he was now one with Chu Xiu. So, he only said a few words and gave Chu Xiu a killing formation of the Blood Demon Hall. No matter what, Lu Jiang he was the hall master of the Blood Demon Hall in the past, which was one of the strongest halls in the entire Kunlun Devil cult. In the past, in the Kunlun Devil cult, there were many martial arts practitioners who were at the true fire spirit refinement realm. However, they were directly under Dugu Weiwei. An existence like Lu Jianghe, who was in charge of a hall by himself, was not a simple person. His eyesight and knowledge were quite outstanding. Shen Baochen and Wei Shia couldn't tell what was going on. However, after Chu Xiu explained it to him, he understood. At this time, in the outside world, with the death of the Sun brothers, Zhang Qingjin did not continue to attack because it was meaningless. However, Zhang Qingjin's expression was a little ugly. In the end, he could not stop Chu Xiu from killing people, and he suffered a loss at the hands of Chu Xiu. However, at this time, Chu Xiu waved his hand, and the blood demon technique controlled the blood on the Sun brothers' corpses to float in the air. Because there was not enough blood, the Sun brothers' corpses were like dried corpses. Everyone present frowned. Killing people was just a matter of nodding one's head to the ground, and what Chu Xiu did was a little too much. Whether he did it to save Lu Fengxian or to avenge a personal grudge, everyone understood. Anyway, it was not their business, so they did not intervene. However, not only had Chu Xiu killed them, but he had also started to humiliate the corpses. This was a little too much. At this time, Shen Baochen had already stopped fighting with Duguli. He frowned and said, "Chu Xiu, they are dead, but you don't even let the corpses go. You are too much." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I'm saving all of you. I've already said that the two of them have been possessed by that ghost. After killing the two of them, I'll naturally have a way to bring everyone out." As Chu Xiu waved his hand, the blood actually gathered to form a formation, and the scarlet formation pattern faintly appeared on the ground. Seeing this scene, the ghost formed by the gathering of countless resentful spirits roared and rushed towards Chu Xiu in a frenzy. Everyone present was stunned when they saw the ghost being so nervous. Chu Xiu really has a solution. Duguli flicked his sword finger, and a scorching sword aura with the power to burn the sky erupted, blasting the ghost into pieces. Although the ghost could immediately recover in this space, it was still unable to get past Duguli to deal with Chu Xiu. In the instant that Chu Xiu's formation was completely completed, a scorching blood-red radiance suddenly blossomed, and a malevolent and evil aura burst forth, causing the ghost to instantly let out a roar. In the body that was originally formed by the black fog, countless blurry heads appeared, as if it was formed by these things. Moreover, the strangest thing was that the people with sharp eyes could actually see the heads of the Sun brothers. However, at this time, the heads of the Sun brothers kept swimming in the black fog, as if they were merging, but also as if they were repelling. In the end, the heads actually began to tear each other apart, and the scene was extremely evil. However, everyone realized that the black space around them actually began to melt, revealing the appearance of the surrounding pits. In the end, the ghost actually let out a cry, and the black fog dissipated, leaving behind pure mental energy that was infused into the unconscious Lu Fengxian's body. Lu Fengxian was suddenly infused with such a huge mental energy, and she suddenly woke up and looked around in confusion. At this moment, Chu Xiu couldn't help but sigh. Brother Lu's luck is really good. Just one nap in exchange for such a powerful mental energy. It's practically equivalent to the primordial spirit's secret technique that I've been cultivating for more than 10 years. Chapter 826. The black space that imprisoned everyone dissipated completely. What appeared in front of them was a huge cave. There were white bones and skeletons all over the place. They looked horrible and ferocious. Obviously, these were the corpses of the people who had been abandoned by the World Sword Sect. Wuxia asked in surprise, "How did you break the formation and kill that ghost?" What Wuxia wanted to ask was what everyone else wanted to ask. Chu Xiu's success was too inexplicable. Could it be because of that formation? Chu Xiu smiled and said, "I just added something to it. Actually, its weakness was exposed by itself. This thing was not a person, nor was it a simple ghost. Instead, it was the resentment and death aura of these martial artists after they died. In addition, it was an evil spirit created by this special environment. Therefore, it could be said that it was an existence with half a spiritual intelligence. It could think and know everything, but its existence was only for revenge. This thing is very pure. Its root is here. If we don't destroy its root, we can't leave unless it lets us go. We just killed those two guys. They must be full of resentment. So, I used their blood to draw a killing formation. I used a man-made killing formation and integrated it into the formation of heaven and earth. This ghost is born from the resentment of the people of the World Sword Sect. They all have the same target of resentment. So, they can gather such a strong resentment to form this ghost with intelligence. But the two people of the Sun family hate me. The target of their resentment is different. It is like 2 drops of ink in clear water. The final result is that everything is messed up. Everyone present was stunned. Was it really that simple? Of course, they couldn't be blamed for not thinking about it. Even if they thought about it, who would be as bold as Chu Xiu to try to kill people directly? Killing 2 people and allowing a group of people to escape, Chu Xiu's methods were not ordinary. At the very least, compared to the sect leader of the World Sword Sect, who had buried 90% of his disciples, Chu Xiu was vicious and merciless. Of course, Lu Fengxian was luckier. He had simply taken a nap and unknowingly obtained the spiritual power of the vengeful spirit. Although Lu Fengxian did not know any essence soul mystic techniques, there was no harm in having strong mental strength. When faced with mental strength attacks from other warriors, it could also play a certain role in defense. At this time, Lu Fengxian was still asking what had happened just now. Fang Qishao was quick with his words and told her about the scene just now. In the end, he even smacked his lips and said bitterly, "That vengeful spirit is really something. Why didn't it choose me? At least I use a sword, don't I? Shouldn't she be more compatible with them? Brother Lu, it's a waste for you to get this mental force. With your martial Dao style, you can only use this mental force for defense. My Sword King city has a secret technique that allows you to transform mental force into a sword. It's not that I'm not loyal, but Sword King city's secret techniques can't be divulged to outsiders. But Brother Chu has a lot of essence soul mystic techniques, why don't you learn them from him?" Lu Fengxian smiled and said, "No need. Marquis Lu Wenho's inheritance doesn't only contain the 9 heavens fiend golden body and the demon god's unparalleled halberd, but also some scattered martial arts secret techniques." But Shui Wuxiang said that these things were either looted by Marquis Lu Wenho in the past or researched out of boredom. After cultivating the demon god's unparalleled halberd and the 9 heavens fiend golden body to the extreme, I wouldn't need these messy things, so I didn't waste time cultivating them. Now that I have a ready-made mental force, I only need to cultivate for a few days and those secret techniques will naturally reach the grand accomplishment stage. Fang Qishao's eyes suddenly widened. He directly turned around and walked away, not wanting to talk to Lu Fengxian anymore. This kind of luck really hurt his self-esteem. It was as if he got what he wanted. At that moment, the surrounding people were still searching in the underground cavern. However, they didn't find much useful things. When the sword sect of the world left, they had already taken away 90% of the sword sect of the world's items. The remaining people were trapped and killed here. Naturally, they didn't have any good things on them. They only had some weapons and swords with them. Moreover, the quality of these things wasn't too high. Occasionally, there were a few god weapons. However, due to time, the sword spirits had completely dissipated. Although there was still the foundation of a divine weapon, no one took it. Everyone hadn't forgotten the strange scene just now. Although Chu Xiu said that the vengeful spirit had completely dissipated, these things had stayed in this environment for over 10,000 years. They were probably already filled with resentment. It would be a little inauspicious to take them back and use them. Therefore, after the search was fruitless, everyone immediately left the underground cavern. However, when everyone just returned to the surface, a huge wave suddenly came, causing everyone to look in that direction. In the next moment, everyone immediately sped towards the direction of the wave. No matter what the wave was, it wasn't ordinary. It was definitely the birth of a precious treasure. At this time, 100 miles away from everyone, in front of a huge and magnificent palace, a powerful array Dao light soared into the sky. The aura was simply terrifying. In front of the palace, more than 10 warriors stood there with frowns. There were true fire god refinement realm and real pellet realm. After they found the well-preserved palace ruins just now, they wanted to open it first. Originally, they thought that after 10,000 years, the array must have decayed or been destroyed. However, they didn't expect the array to still retain such a powerful force. Under their forceful breaking of the array Dao light soared into the sky. Now, even the people in the entire secret realm could see it. They had lost the initiative. Under the impact of the array, the palace plaque that was originally covered in dust was also revealed. There were 3 big words written on it, High Heaven Sect. And below the 3 big words, there was a small line of words, Illusory Realm 6-Branch Palace. The headmaster of the true martial sect, Lu Changlu, stroked his beard and said, it turned out to be a branch palace of the High Heaven Sect. TSK, I don't know if we are lucky or unlucky. Next, even if we break the array and enter, we have to be careful. This High Heaven Sect is not easy to deal with. Qingqing stood aside with his arms crossed. He was surprised when he heard this. This High Heaven Sect is an ancient demonic sect? Qingqing was a rogue cultivator. Although he was powerful when he defeated the World Alliance with a pair of iron fists, in terms of knowledge, he was obviously not as good as Lu Changlu and others who came from big sections. Lu Changlu had a good temper. When he heard Qingqing's question, he explained carefully, High Heaven Sect is not a demonic sect, but it is a top sect in the ancient world. And according to rumors, this High Heaven Sect is overbearing and ruthless. In everything they do, they follow the principle that those who submit to them will prosper, and those who oppose them will perish. They are above thousands of sections. Although they will not kill innocent people, they are not kind. As such, the things left behind by High Heaven Sect will definitely not be allowed to be touched by outsiders. Just looking at this overbearing spirit array, we just wanted to find where the array core was located, yet we ended up triggering the entire spirit array. It's not hard to imagine what other methods are involved. Qingqing chuckled and said, those who submit to them will prosper, and those who oppose them will perish? Not bad, this High Heaven Sect is not bad. Lu Changlu sighed and shook his head helplessly. He did not want to talk to a person like Qingqing, who obviously had a problem with his worldview. The evil king Xingbei Xian, the sect leader of the evil extreme sect, was also present. He was dressed in a black robe, had a gentle smile, and had an extraordinary bearing. He did not look like a famous demonic sect tycoon at all. Headmaster Lu, the array has been triggered. I estimate that it will not take long for the others to arrive. Even if there is any danger, we have to break this array first. Why don't we join hands and temporarily put aside our sectarian differences to break this array together? What do you think? Lu Changlu hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Everyone in the world thought that the true martial sect was the one who truly hated evil and wanted to exterminate the Kunlun devil cult. This was because it was the founder of the true martial sect, the immortal Ning Xuanji, who fought against Dugu Weiwei, which allowed the whole world to escape from the shadow of the Kunlun devil cult. However, in fact, the true martial sect advocated the true purity and inaction of Taoism. Their attitude towards the demonic martial artists could not be compared to the paranoid Chunyang Dao sect at all. In the past, Ning Xuanji fought against Dugu Weiwei. In the eyes of the people in the world, it must be for the sake of the world and to eliminate demons and defend the Dao. However, only the headmaster, Lu Changlu, knew that the reason why Ning Xuanji fought was very simple. There were not many reasons. It was because he and Dugu Weiwei were already standing at the peak of the world at the same time. The two of them would definitely fight. The true martial sect had Ning Xuanji's protection, so they did not have to worry about the Kunlun devil cult at all. However, whether it was Ning Xuanji or Dugu Weiwei, both of their attainments in martial arts had reached the limit of the world. Everyone wanted to see if there would be other scenery above the peak. Therefore, this battle was imperative. However, the people of this world always liked to attach all kinds of labels to some legendary figures. Those who could fight against Dugu Weiwei, who was an unpardonably wicked and shocking devil, were definitely people who had the world in their hearts. Even Ning Xuanji's title of immortal was added by someone after he fought against Dugu Weiwei. However, only a few of the higher-ups of the true martial sect knew that Ning Xuanji was also a human and not an immortal. They would not tell others that according to the records of the true martial sect, Ning Xuanji liked to eat dog meat the most when he was still alive. Moreover, although he would not physically punish his disciples when he was teaching them, his words were extremely harsh. He could scold them until they were ashamed. Ning Xuanji, who was said to have the appearance of an immortal and had fought against the great demon Dugu Weiwei, turned out to be an old Taoist who liked to eat dog meat and was harsh with his words. Even if he fought with Dugu Weiwei, it was not for the so-called righteousness of the Jianghu. This kind of thing would ruin people's worldview. Therefore, the true martial sect sealed all the ancient books that recorded Ning Xuanji's previous words and deeds. Only the headmaster and the higher-ups of the true martial sect were qualified to read them. What the people of the Jianghu, including the true martial sect, needed was a perfect, immortal Ning Xuanji, who was untainted by dust. Chapter 827. Both the righteous and demonic sects joined forces to break the high heaven sect's array. At the same time, other martial artists came one after another. This made Lu Changlu and others feel helpless. They had lost the initiative. Even if they seized the time to break the array, it was useless. At this moment, a stream of light flashed, and Kuang Xiayu's figure appeared. He asked everyone he met, "Have you seen Chu Xiu?" In terms of strength, Kuang Xiayu was stronger than Divine Lord Luo. In terms of wit, Kuang Xiayu was also stronger than Divine Lord Luo. However, Kuang Xiayu was temperamental. In normal times, he was indeed stronger than Divine Lord Luo. But when he went crazy, he couldn't care about anything else. For example, Kuang Xiayu had already gone crazy. In his eyes, Chu Xiu was just an ant that was more interesting and worth studying. In the end, he was fooled by this ant, Chu Xiu. How could he swallow this? Therefore, Kuang Xiayu put aside the task of finding the key that Jun Wuxian had instructed him to. He began to question everyone he met if they had seen Chu Xiu. An old Taoist priest of Chunyang Dao sect was asked. He snorted coldly and said, "Chu Xiu? If I were to find such a devil, I would definitely be irreconcilable with him." When Xing Tingshan and others led the way for Kuang Xiayu, he also heard about the grievances between Chu Xiu and some big sects in Jianghu. Many Chunyang Dao sect martial artists died in his hands, so this old Taoist priest should not be lying. He turned his gaze to a real pellet realm martial artist of Gao Ping Lu family and asked, "You haven't seen Chu Xiu either?" The real pellet realm martial artist of Gao Ping Lu family shook his head quickly and said, "No." Kuang Xiaoyu's eyes showed a trace of coldness, and he asked, "You really haven't seen him?" Being stared at by such a powerful and temperamental guy, the pressure on the martial artist of Gao Ping Lu family was not ordinary. He smiled bitterly and said, "Lord of the Elysium, my Lu family has nothing to do with Chu Xiu. Is there a need to hide it for him? I really haven't seen it before." Kuang Xiaoyue nodded slowly and walked to the other side. She asked Qinqing Di, "Have you seen Chu Xiu?" Qinqing Di glanced at him and said faintly, "No." Kuang Xiaoyue asked suspiciously, "But I seem to have heard that your disciple is good friends with Chu Xiu. Have you really not seen Chu Xiu? Don't let me know that you lied to me. Otherwise, I'll be very unhappy. If I'm unhappy, I'll die." Upon hearing this, Qinqing Di turned around and looked straight at Kuang Xiaoyue. He said coldly, "What a coincidence. If I'm not happy, people will die too. Do you really think that just because you're called Elysium, you've really become immortals living in the heavens?" He doesn't know what he's doing. How could Qinqing Di's character be described as overbearing? He had no scruples at all. When he was in West Chu, even the Taoist master's mansion could not control Qinqing Di. The moon-worshipping cult had never caused trouble for Qinqing Di. At this moment, even in front of the Elysium Divine General, Qinqing Di did not give in. A dangerous smile appeared on Kuang Xiaoyue's lips. Very well, very well. I haven't stepped into the martial world for so many years. It seems that the people of the martial world have forgotten the dignity of the Elysium. That good-for-nothing divine Lord Luo has been running around in the martial world for the past few decades. He has lost all the face of the Elysium. Specks of moonlight appeared around Kuang Xiaoyue's body, but they were mixed with ferocious killing intent. He stared at Qinqing Di and said coldly, "Do you know what punishment you should receive for offending the dignity of the Elysium?" Everyone present looked at Kuang Xiaoyue. Whether it was Lu Changlu from the righteous faction or Xing Beixian from the demonic faction, they all frowned. A look of disgust appeared in their eyes. As a martial artist, their bodies were unyielding. Their willpower was also unyielding. Who would be willing to have someone high above their heads? Even for the current emperors of the three nations, only the people trained by the imperial court would kneel to them. The rest of the people would at most bow to them. There was indeed a hierarchy in the martial world. It was the law of the jungle. However, everyone still left each other some dignity. The Great Light Temple was one of the leaders of the righteous faction. When their disciples went out, others would respectfully address them as masters. The Great Light Temple would naturally return the greeting. Now that the moon-worshipping cult had become the #1 sect of the demonic faction, the disciples of the evil Pole sect would only curry favor with the moon-worshipping cult. They would not bow and scrape and treat themselves as slaves. However, the mentality of the Elysium sect was completely different from theirs. They practically treated the people of the martial world like ants. Asking someone to confess after a few words of quarrel, forget about Qinqing Di, if it were anyone else, they would not be able to take it either. Indeed, upon hearing this, a smile immediately appeared on Qinqing Di's face. The next moment, this smile had already turned into a maniacal laugh. Ha ha ha. In this world, there is no one who can make me, Qinqing Di, confess my sins. A group of mysterious guys hiding in the Kunlun mountain, who know what they are doing, dare to be arrogant in front of me? Die. As soon as the voice fell, Qinqing Di actually took the lead to make a move. With a punch, the breath between heaven and earth was instantly stifled. The next moment, the explosive sound had already come. All the power around seemed to have been sucked away by Qinqing Di's punch. In their eyes, there was nothing else but the domineering punch of Qinqing Di. There were no West Chu martial artists among the people present, but they still vaguely knew about the details of Qinqing Di. He couldn't be regarded as a real pellet state martial artist at all. Which real pellet state martial artist could seriously injure a real fire spirit refinement state martial artist with one punch? The people of Elysium sect didn't know the depth of Qinqing Di, but with just this punch, no one present except Lu Changlu and Xing Beixian was sure to take it. At this time, under Qin Qingdi's punch, Kuang Shiyue's arrogant face changed instantly. This kind of punch, this kind of terrifying fist intent, is this still the existence of the real pellet state? Kuang Shiyue stretched out his hand fiercely, and the light in the sky seemed to gather in his hand, forming a dazzling moonlight. Picking the moon with one hand. As if he was pinching the moon, Kuang Shiyue smashed directly at Qin Qingdi. The surrounding moonlight vibrated, and the fluctuations made Xing Beixian and Lu Changliu's faces change slightly. The Elysium Divine Generals were really not easy to deal with. Kuang Shiyue's strength was even enough to rank in the top 10 of the Fengyun list, and there were 8 like him in the Elysium sect. With this kind of strength, not counting the other disciples and only counting the peak combat power, it was hard to find a sect that was comparable to the Elysium sect in the entire underworld. Qin Qingdi's overbearing punch fell and collided with Kuang Shiyue, who was pinching the moonlight. In an instant, the fist momentum exploded, and the moonlight melted. Kuang Shiyue and Qin Qingdi took a step back at the same time, but Kuang Shiyue's right hand was trembling slightly. There was a hint of shock in his eyes, and there was even a strong sense of puzzlement. What is going on with Qin Qingdi? How can he have such powerful strength and not step into the real fire spirit refinement state? This doesn't make sense. However, Qin Qingdi did not give Kuang Shiyue any time to think at all. Another earth-shattering punch fell, and the earth seemed to tremble along with his punch. Kuang Shiyue snorted coldly, and the boundless moonlight transformed into a crescent moon saber in his hand. He slashed down with the saber. It was incomparably magnificent, but it also reflected the boundless killing intent. It was as if the space had been cut apart by his saber. However, as Qin Qingdi's punch fell, the saber radiance was shattered. The sharp moonlight saber was no match for Qin Qingdi's pair of iron fists. Kuang Shiyue's face had already turned extremely ugly. He was a divine general of the Elysium sect. The Elysium sect was a supreme existence, and a divine general of the Elysium sect was not allowed to be defeated. Back when Divine Lord Luo was defeated by Chu Kuanga, he had already been mocked by the people of the Elysium sect for decades. Today, if he were to be defeated by a wild person like Qin Qingdi, what awaited him would be the same mockery. In an instant, Kuang Shiyue's eyes turned blood-red. His pupils had completely disappeared, and in their place was a blood-red moon in the sky. Moon shadows appeared all around him, but they were blood-red in color and emitted an evil aura. The densely packed moon shadows shrouded Qin Qingdi. From afar, it seemed as if Qin Qingdi's entire body was sealed in that boundless blood moon. Facing this kind of martial arts technique that involved the way of space, Qin Qingdi only had one countermeasure, and that was to punch again. No matter what kind of magical secret technique it was, no matter what kind of martial arts technique it was, he only had one punch, and it was a punch that could penetrate the heavens and the earth. As Qin Qingdi's punches fell, the surrounding moon shadows shattered one after another. Kuang Shiyue seemed to have gone mad. He threw out all kinds of magical secret techniques as if they were worthless. His martial arts were very different from the current martial arts of the underworld, but they were extremely powerful. However, they were all smashed by Qin Qingdi's punches. Both of them were in a killing frenzy. Every time Qin Qingdi's punch fell, a circle of ripples would ripple in the void. Everything that it passed turned into powder. This was the extreme outbreak of power. Moreover, everyone also discovered that Qin Qingdi's body began to glow with a faint flame. It seemed to be gold, but it also seemed to be silver, which made everyone present feel a little familiar. As Qin Qingdi's punch fell, the flame rippled and became stronger. It made Qin Qingdi look like the demon god in the ancient legend who fought with the world. It was very terrifying. At this time, the old Taoist from Chunyang Dao sect suddenly wondered, why is the flame around Qin Qingdi so similar to the internal force true fire refined in the real pellet state? As soon as this remark came out, everyone present was taken aback. They were all existences of the real pellet state, so they naturally knew what the internal force true fire looked like. At first glance, it was indeed quite similar. However, the internal force true fire condensed from the martial Dao real pellet could also be released? At this time, Lu Chenglu of the real martial sect suddenly thought of something. He said excitedly, I understand. I understand why Qinqing Di has such a powerful combat power, but he is still not in the real fire spirit refinement state. Amazing talent. Amazing talent. Qinqing Di took a different path from us. He is the real martial Dao Grand Master, the martial Dao Grand Master who opened a new path for the martial artists of the underworld. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.